Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for January 13th, 2021. My name's Melinda Collins. I'm joined by Arthur Doyle, Richard Wells, Katie Conlon, Michael Zulis, all board members, Michael Dennehy, our town administrator, and our town council, Kevin Freitag, and our executive administrative assistant, Hillary Waite. And of course, our intrepid MATV staff who makes all this possible. On March 12th, 2020, Governor Baker issued an executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law to enable public bodies to carry out their responsibilities while adhering to public health recommendations regarding social distancing. We're able to use a platform such as Zoom in order to give people public access rather than meeting in a public place where people can congregate. Information on how to get into this meeting, either through a computer or using the phone, is actually on the meeting agenda on the public calendar for the town. And you can also watch on cable TV, and those channels are also on the public meeting notice. A word about public comment. If someone wishes to make public comment, you need the latest version of Zoom for it to work because we're in Zoom webinar. And if you don't have that, you can call to make a public comment. And if for some reason there's a difficulty or you don't feel comfortable calling on the phone, you can email us or call the office. So thank you very much for your attentiveness. So if people would please join the board for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to use the privilege of the chair to talk about a few things before we go to public comment. One of which is a good piece of news, and the other two are sad pieces. But our own vice chair, Katie Conlon, just finished up her stint as Mass Selectmen, well, actually now I think they call it Select Board Association president. And their business meeting was on Friday. And I just wanted to say thank you very much to Katie and Jeff Beckwith, who is the executive director of the Mass Municipal Association. Had wonderful things to say about her, and I echoed all of them. And a couple of particular things I wanted to share was the Mass Municipal Associations and the Mass Selectmen's Association, their appreciation of Katie's leadership during this pandemic, her wisdom and her grace under pressure. And he noted that they've never brought more programming to people, and that really she made all the difference this year. So thank you, Katie. We really appreciated your help, Milton, in this way, and all the 351 cities and towns.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you.
On a sadder note, on Monday, the 11th, Michael Lehane, who's a partner of Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, Lehane, died. And Kevin could probably say more about him than I can, but he's a long and illustrious history in the law. And as people who've lived in Milton a long time may know, Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, Lehane has been with Milton and by our side for decades. And John Flynn was our last town council, and now we're fortunate enough to have Kevin Freitag by our side. And all of Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, Lehane is behind us. And we're very grateful for Mr. Lehane's contributions through this wonderful law firm. And we're very sad for everyone's loss.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I
Mr.
may just for a second.
Of course.
Thank you. Once again, I sit in a unique position where I guess I could call Mike Lehane my friend for well over 35 years. We didn't start as friends. I was a union official and he was labor counsel for the town. And he and Mr. Cronin were the chief negotiators for many years with all of the unions. And I suppose Michael was a tough, very tough negotiator. He was all business. He was a brilliant legal mind. Later in life, actually more than once, I would seek advice from him about issues that weren't even labor related, but town related. And the one thing I do want to say, I can't divulge all of it, but sometimes when you're in policing, issues arise that are really unique and really can have long lasting, deep implications. And nearly 20 years ago, way before I was chief, a civil matter arose in this town that, to be honest with you, I had no idea who to seek legal advice from. And Mike Lehane was the person we sought and spoke with, and he was able to investigate and represent this group, this family, in a way that their impact in this town in the 20 years to come was tremendous, and it would have never happened without his wisdom and expertise. And as both John Flynn knows, because I would ask many times, and Michael, I have asked Kevin in the past, Michael really was, just a brilliant legal scholar and a wonderful man. And I know that his dear friend, John Cronin, will miss him dearly, as I will, and as probably all the negotiators who dealt with him over the years of all the unions, because he was tough, but he was fair, and you always walked away at the end with a handshake, and Michael Lehane was good for that. So may he rest in peace. He served this life very well. And thank you for allowing me to indulge in that.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you. And also, I think we'd be remiss if we did not acknowledge what happened in the Capitol. And also the loss of life among Capitol police. To Capitol Police, Brian Sicknick and Howard Liebengood. So if people could join us in a moment of silence, around this loss, and also hopefully for healing. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, may we have one more item of good news?
Oh, absolutely.
I think that as a community, I've always said that we've had no closer partner in government than the city of Boston. And last night we saw Mayor Walsh give his final state of the city as he departs to join the Biden administration as the Secretary of Labor, which is an esteemed honor. Boston is a partner to so many departments in this community in so many ways, as Mr. Dennehy knows. But anyone who knows Mayor Walsh knows that he is a man who works like religiously and fearlessly for the people of Boston, not just the Boston, but everyone in this region. I've said to him more than once, you should be governor, but I guess he has a new job, but I think it'd be nice of us as a community and his neighbor next door to wish him very well, congratulate him, and thank him, not just for his service to the city of Boston and to our area and his partnership to this community, but on the job that he will do as Secretary of Labor for President Biden.
Thank you.
It was a very well done State of the City address, and
It was
touching.
I actually put a tweet out about it. It was truly a heartfelt and inspirational. I mean, he's not a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve very often, which I tend to do sometimes, but he truly did, as you saw last night. This was a very tough decision for him to do this, but he clearly cares about every resident and every neighbor in that city, and he did a great job last night. So
We're
thank you
still
for that.
Dorchester boys, right?
Yeah, I know. He's actually Lower Mills now. He's very close to us. He's only one street into Dorchester.
Thank you. So now is the time. Oh, yes.
No, I'm done. I'm trying to mute.
Okay. Now is the time when we go to public comment. And let me get my timer up. Should have had that up. My apologies. And so for those who wish to speak, if you are on the computer, you move your mouse to the bottom center of your screen, and at the bottom of the window, you click raise hand. If you're on the phone and you wish to raise your hand, please press *9. And then when you are acknowledged, then you press *6 to toggle your mute on and off. And so far, I see one person who would wish to speak. Mr. Corcoran, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. It's striking that you have these very clear instructions on how to raise your hand. Last night was the start of the hearing for 648 Canton Avenue, the 40B application. And there were some technical snafus that resulted in my and others' inability to be heard because the raise the hand function wasn't being monitored properly. I know that the chair and others had also had their hands up to be recognized and weren't able to reach in. As a result, this morning I filed a motion with the board asking it to reopen the hearing so that I and others could have an opportunity to comment on the schedule and related matters. One of the things that I had prepared to discuss last night was a motion to the board requesting the Board of Appeals to return or to reach out to Mass Housing for determination whether the 652 Canton Avenue application is a substantive change that would require a re-review of the project eligibility letter submitted by Mass Housing, and which is the premise for the filing of the 648 Canton Avenue application. I know that we discussed this last week and with this board. I have been advised by the chair that Mr. Hurley, that he thinks it's best to allow the applicant and the town of Milton an opportunity to respond to that motion before he would reschedule or reopen the hearing. I know that Mr. Dennehy and Tim Zerwinski have both been copied on an email to me to that extent. I would urge this board to take the opportunity to comment, to file a motion or a supportive memoranda to the Board of Appeals with respect to this motion. I think it's clear in my mind that the 652 application is a massive substantive change to the 648 application, essentially doubling the size of the project with using the same driveway. So I would urge this board to retain or use counsel to file supporting memoranda if possible, and also urge this board in a timely fashion to reach out to Mass Housing with a request to review the project eligibility status as well, reserving your right to comment, to receive other comments within the additional 30 days that were granted to this board to respond. So I appreciate the time. I appreciate the effort that are going in, but I think this board ought to take an opportunity to join and file supporting memoranda, if possible, with the Board of Appeals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corcoran. I do not see any other hands raised. Just going to give it a moment. Oh, Bernadette McAvoy, you're recognized. And if you could give us your address, please, and your statement.
Okay, 24 Washington Street.
Thank you.
I just want to speak about the proposed project. I don't know what you would call it, on Franklin Street. I guess I'm really surprised. I'm kind of shocked that that would be the top priority. Knowing, you know, what's going on in the town and all the needs that are throughout the town that are more pressing. This isn't a need at all. I would say, I would actually argue. So basically, there are huge needs in other areas. So West Milton, we have a food desert. We have a couple of convenience stores for people to shop at. Are we getting fresh food to people on that side of town? No. I would argue that there could be something that would be better, you know, a project that would be better served to speak to the entire town or address the entire town's needs. So I'm getting a little flustered. I had something prepared, but it was probably too long, so I'm just gonna speak off the cuff.
Just take a breath and take your time.
Yeah, so basically, I just feel like with everything going on, I mean, going out to eat is not a top priority for us. We're in a pandemic, and I get that businesses are suffering. I'm not single-handedly going to, you know, boost, you know, the business of the two restaurants that are the subject of this, or the benefit, you know, the people who benefit from this proposal to shut down Franklin Street and have an outdoor seating area to serve their businesses. That's basically what I see is basically catering to a very, very few specific businesses, not all the businesses in the town. And I also see that there are needs that are more pressing. Again, if somebody could come up with a project to address the needs in West Milton, like I said, there's a food desert. There was a project at one point on Blue Hills Parkway that I thought sounded great, and it got shot down pretty quickly. Anyway, so it's disappointing, I guess I'd like to say, and disheartening that other proposals didn't come as more pressing and as a bigger priority. And the other huge piece that directly affects East Milton is the traffic and safety and accessibility of East Milton Square, going from one side of the square to the other to get to the rest of the town. So people behind the square or in the vicinity of the square trying to cross from, you know, over Granite Ave or Adams Street to get anywhere else in the town. It's not safe to walk for children, for elderly residents, and for anyone for that matter, or cycle for that matter. So I feel that the square is very friendly to, or accommodating to, cut through traffic, which to me doesn't benefit the town. I don't see any of those people stopping. I see that they've gone to a drive-through in another town and just getting off to make a little shortcut through the town. But we're accommodating them, and they're fast, you know, the rate of speed that they're coming through. So, guys, sorry. So it's just really perplexing. It's confusing. It's surprising that these needs aren't more of a priority, that children can't walk to school. So kids can't walk to Collicut School safely. It's like, it would be like sending them out to their death. And I literally mean that. Walking to St. Agatha, the same thing. So I grew up in East Milton and I walked to school every day. And was it dangerous? Well, we, you know, above the overpass, you know, try to get the trucks to honk the horn from above. We thought that was normal. Yes, we were, but there was not as much traffic. You know, this is outrageous. It's like an extension of the expressway, people flying through. So we're accommodating to cut through traffic, more than we're accommodating the actual people of the town who are just trying to get where they're going. So what happens is, and I have an elderly neighbor who lived here her whole life. She was born across the street from us. And, you know, doesn't make sense to her either. We have, she says, you just get in your car because you can't walk anywhere.
Right.
And this doesn't benefit her, shutting down Franklin Street.
If you could wind up your point, that just so, yeah, I just want you to know that that you're sort of at the end, but if you could finish what you're saying.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm kind of
No,
like
no, that's
off
okay.
topic.
Just finish your thought.
I guess that, like, I know, I'm just saying that, like, I'm just surprised and disappointed that those aren't the top priorities, like that the entire town isn't being considered. So, like, I would just urge people who think this is a great idea. Makes no sense to me, but if you think it's a great idea, try to walk with a child or an elderly person by the fire station to cross over where the, you know, that heavy traffic is, that light, then keep going, go over the other light, over the expressway. You're putting your life into your hands. Try to go by Brugger's and cross over to go to church or school or the post office or Collycott for that matter. You're putting your life into your hands. There's a lot to be done on the traffic signals. There's a lot to be done with the timing of going across. There's a lot to be done with speed limits to the town. And so I'm just disappointed that the priority is an outdoor drinking space during a pandemic that will cause more traffic and more congestion and more headache for the people of East Milton and everybody. So I guess
thank you,
disappointing.
Ms. McAvoy. You're over your time. I'm so sorry.
All right. I don't see anything. I don't see, like, all I see is this little direction on the screen. I apologize. I don't see the town.
That's quite all right. I hate to cut anyone off. But I think we do have the understand what you're saying. So
okay, yeah, I know.
Thank you for
on a little too long. Sorry, I had something prepared, but I kind of just went off. No, I apologize, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Take care. Okay, great. Anyone else? Don't think so. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure. Sometimes somebody pops up at the end. Well, okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And now we move on to our COVID-19 update. We have topics: coronavirus aid relief and economic security CARES Act. And Mr. Dennehy.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'll start off with some brief numbers. Most of the public probably knows this, but last Thursday, the governor's report came out, Department of Public Health. Milton remained in the high-risk community category, which is the red category, for the third consecutive week with a positivity rate of 5.21. It was a flat rate from the prior week. During that same period, the state's positivity rate jumped from 6.51 to 7.71. So even though the town is seeing a lower positivity rate than the average throughout the state, we did again hit the high-risk community category for the third straight week. I will say that Milton currently is one of 219 communities in the state that are high risk. Quick math shows that's a little bit over 60% of the state is in that red high-risk community. So we need to continue to be stalwarts in wearing masks and social distancing. We had another successful day of testing at the DPW yard on Sunday. Fallon Ambulance were able to administer 861 tests. 39 of those were positive, which is approximately 4.5% positivity rate. To date, the town has administered nearly 4,000 tests, and we will continue testing. This testing that'll take place this Sunday, January 17th, again at the DPW yard from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. For those of you that don't know or haven't been through before, it's free. It's drive-through. You don't have to be a member of a resident of Milton. You don't have to have any signs or symptoms. The testing is free and it's pretty efficient. The number of tests that we're pumping out in each of these is great and continues to help stop the spread in our community. Along those lines, Caroline Kinsella and the health department started vaccination yesterday in the cellar of Town Hall for first responders in town. I spoke with her this afternoon. They successfully administered 50 vaccinations, the first round, to our town's first responders. There is some supply concerns. They had ordered another 50 for next week to follow through with other first responders that are choosing to vaccinate. And they were told they could only get 40 for next week. So they're continuing to work through the system and make sure that our town is following through phase 1 of the vaccination program that the governor has released. And Caroline will continue to update us on this. But very successful first 2 days, understanding that each of those first responders that were administered a vaccination do have to come back for a second one within 28 days. But in her words, they're working out the kinks and it's becoming a pretty efficient operation. Along those lines, I attended the Park Commissioners remote meeting on Monday. Among other topics that they discussed was the reopening of the parks and playground equipment at Mary C. Lane, Kelly, Andrews, and Shields. It was unanimously approved to reopen the parks and the playground equipment at that time, effective immediately, but to keep the courts, street hockey, basketball, and tennis courts closed until further notice. They are asking that people still wear masks. They are mandatory, and the variable message boards have been updated accordingly. Brief update from Will Adamczyk at the library. Their curbside service program continues to be a success. Over 600 trips to the library, curbside service already in 2001. So I want to applaud both Parks Commissioners and the library for their work to continue to keep our community as safe as possible while also trying to provide the service necessary for our community. So just a quick brief, and you may want to touch upon this, Madam Chair. The joint finance committees for the select board and school committee met last Thursday to talk about some CARES money. As many people know, the deadline of December 30th, 2020 was extended 366 days. So any money that was unused will be apportioned and available until December 31st of calendar year 2021. It would be my recommendation to this board to continue with some testing in February, possibly 2 Sundays in February, to continue the success that we're having with that program. In essence, I would be asking this board at their next meeting on the 27th to amend the contract with Fallon Ambulance Transformative Healthcare from $400,000 to $600,000. It was also discussed at that meeting, the school committee and Superintendent Jett had asked for some funding for buses to possibly move some elementary children to more in-person learning. But I'll let someone speak to that. But so the CARES money is there. We're using it, and I will bring that item back to this board on the 27th to amend the current agreement with Fallon Ambulance Transformative Healthcare.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Yes, I think that the buses are, I think, a really great story. And I don't know, Ms. Conlon, as the finance chair, if you'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Madam Chair, can we go back to COVID for a second first before Katie goes to testing, before
Yes.
Katie goes into the money? So 2 things. I did talk to Rep. Driscoll last night. As you know, they're monitoring the sewage at MWRA.
Mhm.
Yesterday was the highest day. I believe he said yesterday was the highest day we've had yet. And
Wow.
there was a lot of concern that this, we're going to be in this for a while. So I think testing, as Mr. Denny mentioned, is important. The bigger concern I have is the amount of vaccines that are being offered to our public safety personnel. I'm in contact with many others that will be done. Departments much larger than ours. It'll be done by Friday. I just would ask Michael if he would have conversation with both Chief Matt and Chief King, and we'd make sure that we do whatever we can. I know there's a regional site in Needham for first responders, that even though we don't have any here in Milton, that we do whatever we can to get our people vaccinated as fast as we can. Because once that window's gone for public safety and they start moving on to the next groups of essential workers and risk factors, you're going to have to chase it to get to, and it's going to be even harder to get vaccines. So I don't want to lose that window. I know that we have people out there working each and every day. A second police officer in Massachusetts died tonight from Norton. You may have read about it in the paper. That's the second police officer in our region to die in 3 weeks from COVID. I just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to get these people vaccinated as quickly as possible and using whatever resources we can to do that. So that I give it back. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to get that out because I knew this was going on this week.
Right. Well, I had a question about testing too. I believe Caroline had said that we have the second doses of vaccine that are needed for the first responders who are being vaccinated now. And I just was curious if my memory was correct, but I'm also wondering, Richard, if you have an observation as to why others are finished more quickly. I know that we're in a region, or we're in our county group, we're taking care of, right?
So I don't know. I'm not sure. And I don't want to micro. I know one that actually had extras and is giving back. So this is a teaching week for me. So I'm at the academy all week. So I have various departments in the region, and they're in portals. They're going out left and right. And one of them, which is one of my neighbors, which I asked today, I said, "Are any of you having?" He said, "Nope, we'll all be done. They're doing them right away." So when I heard this here, I knew something was wrong. And then I was made aware yesterday by Chief King of the regional site in Needham, and that you can just go into the portal, register, and go there. And I think that we should be doing everything we can to get this done. Everything. 50. Am I right, Michael? It's only like 10, 10, and 10. It isn't even 10, 10, and 10 on 2 days. And I believe that's it for the week, right? We're done.
We're done for the week, yeah. And there were some school nurses that were also vaccinated.
Right. They fall in
Again,
that category, right?
To Caroline's point earlier, she has ordered 50 for next week, and they're telling her she can only get 40. So I will be reaching out to our state electeds to see what the story is with the supply. It's my understanding that we're not alone. Initially, we had asked for 100, and they asked us to join a group of 7 other Norfolk County communities. So I'm not sure if it's the size of our community or the size of our first responding staffing that restricts us. I know some of the larger communities are getting larger doses because they have a larger force, right? What's Boston have? 2,000 police officers, I think, and probably as many firefighters. So, but yeah, I will emphatically say Caroline is doing everything she can to get the vaccine to our first responders. So I know there's been talk, and the governor spoke to it today, that the Kraft family has opened up Gillette Stadium for next week for first responders to get on there. So I'm sure Chief Madden and Chief King are working through that with them as well to make sure that their staff are vaccinated as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. And back to buses.
Sorry, Katie.
No, that's okay. So I think the Finance Committee report is that, and actually several of us were there. Mike Zulis and I are the Finance Committee, but a couple of you also were there. We voted to support, or to recommend, I guess, that our board support using $225,000 or up to that sum for the school department to retain additional school buses to provide more in-classroom instruction for the elementary schools. And I think that's it in a nutshell. And I don't know if it's on for a vote tonight, Madam Chair, if you wanted to do that now, or if we should do that at a later time.
Right. It's not on for a vote anywhere else. And I would suggest, though, that it's appropriate here because CARES is on here. And the issue for people who wonder why we need additional buses is that if you're one cohort A is in the morning, cohort B is in the afternoon, you need a set of buses in the middle of the day to get them back home or back to school respectively. And so that's why that extra money is needed. And I was extremely happy to get that email saying that it's eligible.
The vote at the Finance Committee was contingent on confirming that this would be reimbursable, and our understanding is that we have received an answer that it is.
Right. Mr.
Correct. Yes. So we reached out to Department of Revenue Division of Local Services subject matter expert Brendan Sweeney, who confirmed that CARES COVID relief fund money can be used for buses, school buses. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zulus?
My memory is that the vote at the finance committee was 250,000. I have to check my notes, but that's my memory.
Well, the number was 225. Did we bump it to 250?
I thought it was 225.
I
too.
thought it was 225, but
Yeah.
I don't have my notes with me.
Mr. Dennehy nodded his head, and I have 225.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if we're going to vote, to Katie's point, can we vote both the testing money and the school bus money tonight? Can we do them both?
I would.
I would too.
Yeah.
I'll make that in the form of a motion to increase extend the contract with Fallon to increase the testing up to a level, is it 600,000, Mr. Michael? 600,000, and also to allocate $225,000 to the public schools for, is it additional bus, is it what I call additional bus routes, Katie? Would that cover it?
Buses.
Okay, for that.
Transportation costs for additional in-person learning.
What Michael said, transportation costs for additional.
And is it 600 for the testing and then and then the 225 for the buses?
It's from 4 to 600.
Pardon me. I think it was 400, right, for the testing, and maybe the 225. Is that right, Mike?
The testing would go from the current amendment to the current allocation to the transformative is 400. I'd be asking for another 200 to bring it to 6.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
200 for testing and 225 for school buses.
I'll accept Michael's 200 for testing and 225 for school bus transportation.
Mr. Freitag?
Uh-oh, Kevin's waving his hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, with regard to increasing the transformative contract, I think that we might want to hold off on doing that until we have that on the agenda. We've always done that by way of a formal agenda item in the past for the past 2 amendments and the original contract. I think we'd be better off to hold off on doing that until that's on the agenda.
I think you're going to make us have to have a special meeting then, because I think we don't meet before.
We don't, but we'll probably need a meeting anyway. Just
Of course
given
we will.
some things. Sorry. I know everybody would like a week not to have this meeting.
Okay.
So
I'll amend my, I'll accept town council's comments as a friendly amendment, and I'll take out the transformative care Fallon aspect of it and just leave it at 225 on the school transportation. How's that?
thank you.
Second.
Good. Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins. Yes. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Freitag. And item number 5, Mr. Dennehy, are we ready to talk about this? We don't have an application yet for the display of Milton High School class of 2021 banners on town roads by Milton High School Parent Teacher Organization.
Right. We're going to defer this, but there was conversation just for the viewing audience. A parent of a senior at Milton High School, understanding what everyone's been through, is trying to do something very creative and display pictures of the graduating class of 2021 with some banners throughout town. So we're trying to work on the logistics of that, but at this time we don't have much good information. Myself and DPW Director Chase Berkeley and some of the utility companies and some of our other private partners in town are working through with Michelle Cardoza, who brought this to our attention, and we're working with Miss Cardoza. Obviously somewhat time sensitive because we're talking about the graduating class and the spring will be here before we know it, but we're going to have to defer this item for tonight.
Okay. All right. Well, we're looking forward to it. Thank you. 6. Here's Karen. This is our introduction to our Director of Finance Town Accountant. Karen Praval. And welcome, Karen. It's delightful to see you and all of you, since we were masked before. And Mr. Dennehy, if you'd like to do an introduction.
Sure. I am overwhelmingly enthusiastic to introduce my board in the town of Milton to the new Director of Finance in the town, Karen Praval. I can honestly say, and you were part of the interviews, Madam Chair, the town of Milton is very fortunate to have met her. Everyone, I mean, Karen, you're jumping in the deep end very quickly, but for those in the viewing audience, to take a look at her resume, Ms. Praval has been building her career towards something like this for the last 2 decades. So very proud to announce her. Want to welcome her here tonight. Let everyone know, although she's not officially starting with us until January 25th, she has been already involved in several Zoom meetings with respect to our general insurance and group insurance and some capital improvement stuff. So Karen's already jumping in the deep end for us, but without further ado, I'd like to introduce Karen Praval, the town of Milton's Director of Finance. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dennehy. Through you, Madam Chair, it's an honor to work for the city of Milton. I'm really excited to join your team and to move forward with the budget and just making, Milton, the place that everyone loves to live in and making things transparent. So looking forward to joining your staff. And I thank you for the opportunity and very kind welcoming remarks.
That's wonderful.
Welcome.
Karen.
Thank you.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask Karen? Or she's really, her municipal experience is just so exciting. We had a great interview, and one of my favorite parts of things that she talked about was managing, and I just know that people are going to love working with her, and she's going to make everybody feel comfortable and supported as they all become a new team together. So,
yeah, having come from a larger municipality myself, coming from Cambridge, where Karen spent the better half of 19 years, I think, and then moving on to Brockton. There's a lot more money in the budget, but Karen quickly identified some of the strong points in the town's budget and some of our inefficiencies, and really wants to tackle those and try to do more with less, understanding, we're all living in a COVID world, and our town is somewhat revenue restricted. But yeah, she's certainly up to the task, and I'm very proud to have her here tonight.
Question, Madam Karen, did you work for Bob Healy?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
Bob Haley for several years, and Rich Rossi when he became city manager. So I was in the city manager's office for 15 years.
My wife is a longtime city employee of the city of Cambridge.
Oh, really? I probably know.
I think you do, but we'll leave that for a later time.
that's right. Sometime when people can meet each other in person. But
Cambridge has all the money. This is going to be a good thing. Cambridge has all the money. They don't even know what an override is.
No, they don't. Well, Brockton I worked in.
Oh yeah, 2 different worlds.
For several years, for more than 18 years, and I worked for the city of Brockton for 2 years. So really looking at ways to be creative and looking at revenue, looking at different grants and ways to fund different projects, especially when there's limited money. Cambridge had a wealth of revenue, just through taxes, through the schools, and going to Brockton, it was kind of a completely different budget. And, there were just different things that we had to really look into to be creative, to, manage expenditures and have controls, but also look at ways of funding things through different resources. So those are some of the skills that I've, hope to bring to Milton as well.
thank you. Ms. Conlon, did you?
Yes, Karen, welcome aboard the Finance Committee. I'm sure all of us will be interested in working with you and looking forward to that. I saw on your resume that you have an MBA from Curry College, so you have some familiarity with Milton to begin with.
I do. It was a great school that I attended when I got my master's. Oh, I can't believe it's been 12 years ago. But 12 years ago, I'm very familiar with Milton. My son and I, we're in the Blue Hills. We hike the Blue Hills all year round, snowshoeing and, just in the springtime. And, it's a lot of different friends and family that live in the area. So I'm really excited to work for the town. I have very strong connections with working in a community and just seeing that the value that we bring in terms of reviewing the finances is something that the community is looking for. And everyone's looking for a place to live, somewhere that has good school systems, and the amount of work that we do behind the scenes in terms of making that work financially is something that I take pride in. And, just really looking forward to this new challenge.
Hiking in the Blue Hills seems to be consistent with being inducted into the BU Athletic Hall of Fame. So you've got quite a background. So welcome aboard.
I just have too many PT appointments. You'll see me with knee braces and ice and heat pads, compared to my former track career.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and good luck wrapping up in Brockton. I know they're going to be sad to lose you, but it's our gain, and we're very excited.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee, board members.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Karen.
Night.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, so now we're on to the audit committee and our conference with them.
If members of the audit committee could raise their hand, that would make it easier to make sure I don't miss any of you.
Who's here?
Madam Chair, if I might.
Mhm.
Hillary, could you also authorize Craig Peacock
Is he
from
here?
Powers and Sullivan?
Yes, and he is here.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Hello.
Hi, Kathy.
Hi, good evening, all.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. We do appreciate it. So the audit committee, Kathy White and Carolyn Ferguson, and our auditor, Craig Peacock, are with us. And I will turn it over to you, Ms. White.
Great, thank you very much. We met just a few days ago with Craig and his team from Powers and Sullivan, going over, this is for the financial period ending June of 2020, so half a year ago. But as is typical, we'll let Craig, speak to some of the highlights on the financial statements. I assume you've all received the draft of them, and including the management letter. And I will say the town treasurer also joined us to talk through some of those management letter comments, which was very helpful. And there has been, progress on those, but also status of following up in the intervening 6-month period on those. So why don't I let Craig speak to the highlights on the financial statements, or I don't know if there's any specific place that the members of the board would like to start on those, but specific questions, or if you should just launch into some of those, probably makes sense. Hit the highlights. And I will also say, Karen, you're still there. We're looking forward to meeting you and working with you, and very happy you've joined the town.
Thank you.
If members don't have specific questions, maybe Mr. Peacock could give us an overview. Great.
Excellent.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Kathy, for the introduction. And Karen, we also look forward to meeting and working with you. We're a resource for you, and you can, I'll make sure that you have all our contact information. And what we like to do is partner with our clients, and our phones and our emails are open 24/7. If you have something to discuss or anything that we can assist you with that comes your way, please don't hesitate to call at any time. So what I'd like to do, as Kathy said, we're here to discuss the June 2020 audit. I will try to be relatively efficient. I'll give you some of the highlights, and I'd be more than happy to drill down into any questions that any members of the board might have. I'd first like to start just by thanking your town administrator, Michael Dennehy, and his whole financial team in this year of the pandemic. And I would have to say 99% of our audits have occurred essentially remotely this year, due to, town halls being closed down, just the whole criteria of what had been going on. I would suggest that the financial team for the town of Milton really stepped up and provided the information that we need. We have a secure portal that you're able to upload the information to. I must say we did not skip a beat in the audit. The information was very timely. The information was accurate the first time through. Everybody was just as prepared as if we walked in on a Monday and, we planted ourselves down for a couple of weeks. So thank you very much to everybody, because we could not have done it alone. Also, I'd like to say I just learned through our meeting with the audit committee last week that the town was able to get your annual town meeting in before June 30th. It's of our clients. It's one of you. We have many clients that tried outdoor stuff over the summer, all different sorts of iterations. So that was a big accomplishment on the town's part as well. Going into the financial statements, again, I'll hit some of the highlights and more than happy to drill down anywhere. We've been talking for a number of years, some of the larger liabilities that get recorded within the financial statements. GASB 75 being the other post-employment benefit liability, essentially went up to $171.7 million for the year ended June 30, 2020. That is a liability that tends to continually creep up for the vast majority of communities in Massachusetts. The most important attribute of that is because there really currently is not a mandate to fund that liability. So communities are doing the best they can to put some money aside in an OPEB trust. The town, put another $50,000 aside and has about $1.2 million as of June 30th in their trust. But because of, unlike when we talk about the pension side, which has a mandatory funding schedule and an end date, the current employees, the OPEB liabilities really just continues to grow. So that is an elephant in the room for pretty much all Massachusetts communities at this point in time. But the town is working to put money aside, and that's you're right in line with your peers at this point related to that. GASB 68 is what refers to the net pension liability. That liability, it's been quantified for years on the retirement system side. However, about 7 years ago now, it has to actually be recorded within the town's full accrual financial statements. As of now, the pension system is on a calendar year basis. So in the fiscal year financials for the town, the retirement system is reported as of December 31, 2019. At that point, the net pension liability for the town of Milton was approximately 19 million, which was a decrease of 6.5 million from the previous year. The main driving factor of that decrease was the fact that calendar 19 pension systems had a really good investment year. The town of Milton's retirement system generated approximately $20.5 million net investment income, which once the actuary takes everything into account to come up with the liability, that goes a long way in helping to reduce that liability. The town has about a little over $38 million worth of long-term bonds that are both governmental and within the water sewer enterprise funds as of June 30th. There's about 10.8 of that in the water and sewer, and another $27 million within the governmental, for various governmental projects that have occurred over the years. Something new this year, I know we kind of spoke, the board and your town administrator spoke on the COVID related and CARES Act funding in the town's financial statements this year. We are reporting that the town had spent approximately, of just CARES Act funding, about $177,000 through June 30th, mostly for PPE and related expenses. And I know, as your town administrator mentioned, the deadline was originally December 30 of 2020, and it has been moved a full year and a day to be able to utilize the allotment that was given to the town of Milton. So one would expect there'll be more of those expenditures occurring in fiscal 21. I know some of those funds were just appropriated, and you know, I think we're all hoping that we get to a point where the vaccines and such are kind of rolled out and help us all in that respect. Looking at the general fund budget as of the year ended June 30, 2020, the town had planned on using approximately $2.5 million of both free cash and release of overlay to balance the 2020 budget due to strong collections and or because of the pandemic, a lot of different activities and such did not occur. So there were some budgeted appropriation dollars that weren't spent. So in the end, with those both the turnbacks and our receipts, we were only needed to use about $1.1 million to balance the budget of a $2.2 million plan. So even though, you know, we as a firm, we've had many clients that saw their collection rate of your first year collection rate, if I may, on your real estate and personal property tax really go down. The town still saw just about a 98% collection rate on your 2020 tax bills. So that's excellent. And that really helped to drive the budget and to minimize the amount of free cash that was needed to balance the budget in fiscal 20. Your unassigned fund balance in your general fund increased by approximately $172,000 for this fiscal year to a balance of $9.1 million. It's important to note that the $9.1 million does in fact include the town's 4 stabilization funds, one of which was new in fiscal 20. Quickly, there's a general stabilization, a roadway stabilization, a capital stabilization, and the new one was the debt stabilization. So it's a mechanism for the town, you know, to be able to put some monies aside for various capital and other related expenses. So we've seen some consistent contributions and or investment income increase in the town stabilization funds. And with that said, at the $9.1 million, that represents just under 8% of the fiscal 2020 expenditures. We talked about the pension system a little bit. They had a great year in investment income, but what that also did was it not only lowered the liability that got recorded within the town's financial statements, it brought the funded ratio of the pension system from last year being, again, 2018 calendar year at 83.7%. As of December 19, we're all the way up to 88.7%. So, you know, we'll call that a strong 5% increase in your funded ratio for the pension plan, which is great. I've mentioned the OPEB trust has $1.2 million in it as of June 30th. In 2020, the contributions to that fund were made up of a $50,000 contribution from the town, and approximately $23,000 of investment income, essentially to get us to the $1.2 million. And in summary, on the financial statements, the town received an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion. It's what the town wants to receive. We did not have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies to report. When we get to the management letter, we'll see there are some issues that we felt were important to note. However, they're more operational and that type of thing. They are not considered significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. And based on both my experience and my previous my partner Richard Sullivan, who many of you have worked with over the years prior to his retirement, I'm not aware of the town ever having a material weakness or a significant deficiency, which is great. We have some clients who have 50-page management letters, if you can believe that. So, I think the town has really been proactive. Your audit committee is extremely strong and very involved, meaning they always have a lot of good questions to ask. They're always paying attention to, how the audit's going, how the finances, what makes it into the management letter and why, that type of thing. As your chair of the audit, Kathy, mentioned, we did have what I thought was a very good meeting on Monday of this week. We were able to discuss many of the issues and that type of thing. And the last thing I guess I'd say on the financial statements, there was also no permanent adjustments that we had to give to the previous town accountant to make within the general ledger. So that means that based on all of our audit review and the information provided, we were able to materially substantiate all figures within the general ledger that were used to compile the financial statements. That's the financial statements in a nutshell. I can move on. There's two other reports, being the schedule of federal awards, which is a relatively quick overview, and then the management letter, which I can go over quickly and drill down again if anybody would like to. Before I move on, maybe I'll just ask, are there any specific questions from any members of the board regarding the financial statements?
Doesn't seem to be here.
Okay, so I'll move on to what I would call the schedule of expenditures of federal award programs. What that report does is it's a report that goes to the various federal agencies that provide funding to the town. And as auditors, we're required to work with the town to compile this report to essentially report every federal program in which dollars were spent in fiscal 2020. As of June 30th, the town had spent about $2.6 million worth of federal funds, of which there's a process as auditors that we have to go through to determine each year which specific programs need to be audited as what we call a major program. The federal government gives us specific requirements to look at and follow through. For the town of Milton, your largest program is generally the special education program. And based on the way that the requirements of the government, the federal government work, that is the program that will be looked at more often than not. I'm happy to say that accounted for approximately 52% of your federal expenditures this year. And we had no findings or question costs. In the federal report for the town of Milton received an unmodified opinion as well. So that is a clean opinion. We did not have any findings. And again, the school was extremely responsive in getting us the information that we needed remotely and working with us through these times. And again, on the school side, we did not skip a beat with the audit as well. I appreciate everybody's time and efforts in getting us what we needed there. that would lead us to the management letter, the final report.
Madam Chair, if I might. Craig,
Yes.
could you just touch upon, you mentioned the CARES Act, the coronavirus relief fund money, and the roughly $170,000 that was expended in 20. Going into 21, knowing that it's going to be a much larger number, could you just speak to what that's going to look like from an auditing perspective very quickly?
So absolutely, thank you. So what we'll have to do as auditors is take a look at, now there's some, there's different buckets of federal COVID monies. As the board had discussed earlier, there's CARES funds. There's the ability to apply for FEMA reimbursement. There's the town did receive some school lunch federal COVID funds this year to help keep the program going. What has to be done, and the federal government is considering these funds to be how I would refer to it as of higher risk, meaning that we will need to look at what the town of Milton did for fiscal 21 and essentially look at the request for reimbursement, where the monies were spent, and essentially do an audit of those funds and the uses of those funds, as well as the reporting and the request for reimbursements from the various agencies, assuring that the funds were spent appropriately for allowable costs, that type of thing. And depending on the final dollar value of the different buckets of federal dollars spent, will sort of dictate how much of what I'd call a deep dive, we have to do on those federal dollars. But currently, again, they have been all dictated as of higher risk, which means that, again, in fiscal 20, as we mentioned, it was about 177,000. So that does not meet what we call, there are two criteria. There's a type A and a type B threshold. A type B threshold starts at 185. So the 177 for fiscal 20, we did not have to look at every invoice and every dollar spent for that. However, the anticipation for fiscal 21 would be that it would surpass the 177,000. And through our planning, we'll have to get a good understanding of the dollars spent to determine the level of testing. However, if they've exceeded 185 and or 750, which is the type A threshold, we will then have to work with the grant director or whoever's overseeing those projects and essentially pretty much audit almost 100% of the costs of those programs.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you. If no further questions, that would bring me on to the management letter. The management letter for fiscal 20 had 4 comments that came forward from fiscal 19. And I'll give a quick overview. Again, we can discuss in more detail if anybody has any specifics. As far as the 4 comments that carried forward, one related to the purchase order system, of which the vast majority of departments are up and working. I think there was just some bugs getting the fire department up, and I know that the finance team within the town has been working with the fire department to work on getting them on board with the purchase order system. We've talked a few times over the years on some various bank account reconciliation issues and such with the cash. I would say that we've noticed some definite improvements in those processes during the fiscal 20 audit. There's still a comment, just because the town uses a specific financial software package for their cash book, and then there's the general ledger, and then there's your bank statements. And so realistically, there should be a monthly process that reconciles all 3. And really we should be, the town should be in agreement between the general ledger, the cash book, and the treasurer's, bank to book type reconciliations. In the past, we've had a few accounts where maybe there's been some reconciling items that we couldn't get 100% supporting documentation for, most of which we've been able to determine this year were mainly timing issues. And so, although as auditors, we do look for supporting documentation to each and every reconciling item, in this case, I can understand maybe some of the lack of support for some of the numbers. I will say the numbers that were what I would call unsupported as of June 30th were not material to the financial position of the town or the financial statements. That's why we were still able to provide an unmodified opinion. But we have seen the treasurer's office working with the various departments, as well as calling ourselves with questions to try to get better at this and have the reconciliations occur in a more timely fashion, as well as in a more proper and/or, so that the facts and figures have integrity for the board, such as yourself, the finance committee, and anybody that requests that type of information from the treasurer's office. So there was still a little bit of work to do, but I definitely saw improvement on that front in 2020.
Craig, can I note one comment that the audit committee had was with respect to this on the bank account reconciliations, was a suggestion or challenge, if you will, that Mr. McAuliffe, Mr. Dennehy, get together and think about what the ideal sort of input, the entry points for all the, whether it's, cash or checks or Unibank credit cards, to think about systemically, what would the ideal be for the town? Part of the issue is we have, a dozen different people that are trying to give input into the treasurer, that are taking in cash and, or checks or, or Unibank payments. And is there an ideal way that should operate or simplify? And so rather than, obviously this has been a comment lingering for a long period of time. And so rather than trying to correct, should there be a better system for it? What do other towns do? What would be ideal for us? Something to think about in that context, to say we shouldn't have 12, 15 entry points for people making collections on behalf of the town. Is there a simplified way to do it that would sort of be an end around, if you will, to this concern? And we absolutely heard the message that there was improvement in this area, and but continues to linger. So
thank you. That was very valuable. Nick, the next comment that we had, again, we just spoke of the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. A couple of years ago, the federal government put out a requirement that communities have a written documentation. Now, we, as auditors, we feel our clients were always generally handling their federal funds properly. The town of Milton has not had an audit finding in their federal report. However, they wanted that information to be documented. How do we handle grants? How is it determined where it can be spent and that type of thing? That information was put together back in fiscal 19 and approved by the school committee during fiscal 20. So that comment is officially resolved. And the last comment that was there last year related to tailings. If anyone is unfamiliar with tailings, when the treasurer issues, for instance, a vendor warrant, easy math, there's 10 checks. After 90 days, only 8 of them have cashed. There's 2 checks still outstanding on the list. After so long, the town is able to follow what we call the Massachusetts abandoned property laws. And after following certain procedures, if nobody comes forward to claim these checks that have become stale and have not cashed, the town is then able to bring those funds, void those checks and bring those funds back into the general fund. So it pays to pay attention to the outstanding checklist from treasurer's standpoint and to follow the abandoned property laws. We noticed that a chunk of checks were removed this year and put into tailings. But we did notice that there was still a fair amount of checks, what we call greater than 3 or 6 months old on both, mostly the vendor, because the town has implemented direct deposit on the payroll account. So it's mostly vendor checks at this point. But the treasurer, again, was at our meeting the other night, and he spoke positively of, working and continuing the progress that was made during fiscal 20 in 21 and beyond to clean up those outstanding checklists, which not only could potentially assist to increase the free cash of the town if they're once able to be voided and brought in, but it would also help to minimize and or make more efficient the reconciliation process of bank to book, as opposed to having such a large outstanding check listing and having to follow those through each year. So we saw some progress there, and we anticipate more progress going forward. We had 3 new comments this year, one referring to insurance withholdings. What we have found in other communities is sometimes the information flow between the departments maybe is not extremely timely. And at times when the monthly health insurance bill comes in, myself as Craig could be on there as, let's say, a family plan or a husband and wife plan. Maybe I've been divorced and I don't need to carry health insurance for my ex-spouse, or I'm just as an example, what we've seen in other communities that those bills have not been consistently reviewed to make sure that, one, we're either not paying for people that have left the town, or that have had some sort of a major event in their life that would change the type of insurance that they're eligible for, and or the participation on the town side for that. So we made a recommendation this year, to maybe, look at that at least on a quarterly basis at a minimum, and to assure that what we are paying for the town share is accurate. Treasurer's office this year, we did notice an increased use of manual checks. From an auditor's standpoint, we understand there are times when manual checks are necessary. However, we try to minimize the use of manual checks, or we recommend that our clients minimize the use of manual checks at all possible. The treasurer had some instances that he explained when they were needed, and there were a couple items where we spoke of tailings, where I did not cash my check. 6 months later, I contacted the treasurer's office because I saw my name in the paper, and I say, you owe me $100, and I provide all the necessary information to the treasurer's office. They were using manual checks for that. As an auditor, I would recommend that those type of reimbursements go through the warrant process. It was my fault. I did not cash my check timely. I do not see any reason that the town needs to write a check that moment to the person. It would go through the proper controls and go through the warrant process. So the treasurer's looking into that and trying to minimize the use of manual checks. And our final comment for this year, the treasurer's office reconciles the retirement system's bank accounts. And what we noticed this year is that those reconciliations were taking place on a monthly basis. However, they were not always being reconciled, one back to the town's cash book, as well as back to the retirement system records themselves. So that's kind of a little bit of a, I think that's a really big step, in my opinion, to make sure that we reconcile both to the cash book, but even more importantly, to the retirement systems records. The treasurer's response was that although this did occur during the calendar 19 throughout calendar 20, they were able to implement some new procedures, and he felt that this comment will be resolved when we come back and look at what has occurred with the retirement board and their bank accounts. He felt that they were timely reconciled and reconciled back to the systems records in 2020. So we'll have to follow up with that. But again, based on information I have at this point, I would expect that comment to be resolved as well. And in a nutshell, that's our 3 reports. I'd like to thank the town and their financial team for assistance in the audit in the troubling times we're in now. Bending over backwards to get stuff scanned, and it took more time, I'm sure, on the town side, but we were able to keep moving, and we were still able to get in and work on the town's audit within 60 days after fiscal year end, which for a town the size of Milton is very impressive, and that has been consistent. We have had that schedule for the audit consistently for many, many years now. So we really, that's kudos to the town's financial team. So I'm in a nutshell, that's what I have, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions or drill down if there's anywhere that anybody would like any more information.
Well, thank you, Mr. Peacock, and thank you so much for all of your work on our behalf. I'm glad we're a great partner, but so have you been, and it's been great working with you. Do members have questions or comments? Mr. Doyle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you for a very thorough and deep dive presentation. I read the reports, and my sole question centers about matters such as manual checks and outstanding checklists, and it's to ask whether or not there are any tools or other resources that are needed in order to narrow or eliminate gaps of what you identified for remediation purposes that we can help the town with.
Mr. Dennehy?
Craig, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I think this is twofold, Member Doyle. So I really need to thank the audit committee for their attention to detail. Member Sutphin, who's on the call here tonight, each of them talked about some of the internal controls and the mechanisms that could help our town tighten up this system. So I was unaware, but SoftWrite, which is our financial software package system, when it issues a check throughout the town, it does not have an expiration date on it. Most people know that their checking account expires after 180 days, something to that effect. So after our call on Monday night, myself and the treasurer jumped on an email chain with the SoftWrite expert, and they are in fact going to put, basically that check is voided after 180 days, something that was not on our check system. So some of those tailings, stuff that probably shouldn't have been cashed, could have been, because one of those internal controls was not only a bit loose, but actually not in place. So that stuff and the attention to detail by that group regarding some of these internal controls should certainly tighten the process a little further going forward. So I thank the audit committee and our auditing team for noting that stuff. And there's still work to be done, but I think we're heading in the right direction. And that was an easy fix. That was, some low-hanging fruit, if you will. But there's some other stuff working with our, as Chairwoman White talked about, where we can work for one entry point coming in from all the people that are handling cash in the town. It's just, there's too many entry points. And we're going to try to centralize that over the course of the next year. But I don't know if members of the audit committee want to speak to that and any of that stuff that I mentioned. But I want to thank you for that, noticing that stuff and recommending some of those controls.
That's a great update, Mike, on the checks just since our call Monday. So great progress in just 2 days. Thanks for that, and appreciate the other comments.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Conlon.
Thank you, Mr. Peacock, and to Kathy White and the members of the audit committee. I think I'd like to suggest that we ask the town administrator to follow up and to either report back to us quarterly or I suppose quarterly, I was going to say, or at a 6-month interval on these comments in the management letter, especially the prior year comments, because we'd like to really get those buttoned down so that I think the reconciliations and the tailings are the two most important ones in the prior year comments. And if we could try to get those resolved in the next 2 quarters, that would be very helpful, and to address the current year comments. So I think we need some kind of follow up on a regular basis so that the board knows what progress we're making.
Certainly.
And obviously some of this is in the treasurer's court, and he's an elected official, but I think we can ask the town administrator to, be our liaison with the treasurer and try to work these things through and provide whatever assistance can be provided.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, since they're already working on these things together. And okay, so we can...
And I see Miss Preval taking notes, so this is all good.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr.
I
Doyle.
just want to go back. I appreciate the comments in response to my question, and just want to go back again to Mr. Peacock and see whether or not there's anything that would be identified that hasn't been thought of resource-wise that ought to be explored.
Well, what I would say is I think that both the audit committee and your town administrator definitely was engaged in the conversation in our meeting last week. As Mr. Dennehy mentioned, they've already worked with your software company to get the an expiration put onto your checks, which should help with the reconciliation process and the outstanding checks for the treasurer's office. The retirement reconciliations, from what I understand, have already been corrected. And as far as overall bank reconciliation process, we did see a lot of progress this year. I think it really comes down to, and in my opinion, and please, members of the audit committee, please feel free if you disagree. But my opinion, based on the treasurer's comments the other night, is that he is very willing and in being proactive in working with those. I think it's really just a few departments that he's been having some issues with, but I do really agree with Mr. Dennehy and the audit committee that if the town works to limit the amount of access points where cash is being collected, that would make a really big, what I'll call a dent, if you will, on the issues that the treasurer's office is having with various departments. So if you eliminate some of the access points, and it's either done through a lockbox or online credit cards or walking into the treasurer's office, it's going to make that information much more real time for the treasurer, and they are not going to be having to trace and track down this information from various departments. I think that in itself is going to make a huge difference in the reconciliation process.
Thank you very much. And also to Mike and the audit committee members.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other comments. Yes, thank you so much to our audit committee. We really appreciate. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Zulus, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just a quick comment. The fact that we have no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, and that our auditor is giving us such a good report I think is a great credit to our administration and to our audit committee. Those things don't just happen. Katie's right. We should stay on those items that we continue to work on, and get reports back, more than sooner than annually. But I think it's a great credit to our audit committee and to our town administration. And the fact that during this COVID year, and I guess prior to June 30th, we had a 98% collection, I think is a great credit to the treasurer. So thank you to all of you for all your work. These things don't just happen, and the town owes you a lot for your efforts.
Thank you. I couldn't have said that any better. And I heartily second all of that. And we really appreciate all your work. And we look forward to seeing you again next year in better circumstances.
Hopefully in person.
Yes.
Great.
That's correct. To that point, Madam Chair, probably good to introduce the next agenda item.
Yes.
While we have Mr. Peacock here in the audit committee.
Yes. Our next agenda item is the extension of our audit agreement with Powers and Sullivan.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion. Unless you want to read about it.
No, that's okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the extension of the town's audit agreement with Powers and Sullivan through the fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2021, and authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Absolutely.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Collins, yes. Excellent. Well,
Thank you all. Thank you,
so
Kathy,
much.
too, and
The
your whole
audit
team.
committee.
Yes.
Karen, get ready, hopefully for the audit invasion in August.
That's right.
I will say, Matt,
One question on the letter, you were extending it for 1 year. I think there was an option
yeah,
to.
so
I thought we were supposed to
I was
extend.
just going to come back to that. So I'm glad you asked that, Kathy, because I see a note. The motion says June 30th, 2021, but the agreement offers extension for 21 and 22. Do you want me to amend that motion to 22, Michael? I mean,
Yes.
whatever the members, you want me to do that?
Yeah,
I would prefer.
Last year's letter was for just 1 year and had the option to extend it for 2 more. And so I would think, given the new town accountant, director of finance, the situation we're all in, probably signing up for the 2 years makes sense.
Can we just do a second motion for the second year? Didn't we already
So
vote?
I'll make a second motion to approve an additional extension of the town's audit agreement with Powers and Sullivan. And this one will end on June 30th, 2022, and authorize the town administrator to sign the agreement.
Good catch, Richard. Second.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms.
Thank you,
Collins?
Kathy. I saw that note there, and I thought Michael wanted to ask Michael or someone, so thank you.
Very good.
I will say before you leave, and Katie, you're the only one who can relate to this. 4 years ago was my first year here, and I recall we had an extremely long audit report that year. And to Mr. Zulis's comment, you've all brought things a long way in 4 short years. I mean, this is a much different environment I'm sitting in tonight than I sat in on my first year here 4 years ago. So thank you all.
Definitely
And thank
been
everybody for
continuous
that.
improvement. So that's a good thing by the town and our Powers and Sullivan. Been very helpful. Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In summary, if I might just say, thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board, the audit committee, your town administrator. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to continue our relationship with the town. We have been, I think it's been hopefully a mutually beneficial experience. I learn from your audit committee and your team each and every year, and I hope that we can add value as well. And again, just thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Mr. Peacock.
Thank you.
Thank you to the audit committee. Madam Chair, I think that group of volunteers in our town rivals anybody with respect to subject matter expertise for the committee that they sit on. So thank you all members of the audit committee as well, and look forward to working with you again another 2 years Mr. Peacock. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you,
Mr. Peacock,
as well.
give our regards to your colleagues, including Mr. Sullivan, because we
Yes.
won't see you at the trade show at the MMA next week. We won't be there in person. We might see you online.
I know, we were just, we were all talking about that today. I've been there 25 years in a row, and you kind of always get that, as you probably know, we get that same kind of corner all the time. And yes, it's going to be a different world this year. But as Kathy mentioned, hopefully next year we're all there in person.
Just keep making those vaccines and that, wish may come true.
I know.
Right. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Take care. Take care. Okay. Let's see. Do we have Mr. Moderator here?
I haven't seen him, Madam Chair, but I know he submitted a letter, a formal letter to.
We do have the
board,
letters.
yeah.
He often,
I'll make a motion just for the purposes of discussion, Madam Chair. So I'll make a motion to approve the moderator's recommendation to hold a virtual town meeting for the special town meeting of February 22nd, 2021.
I'll second the motion. Madam Chair, I noticed that Mr. Hiss was in the attendee list a short while ago, so
okay, well, let me.
I wonder whether he might have stepped away and might be coming back.
Right, let me look again.
I had promoted him and just lost him, so it might be.
Oh, okay. Well, perhaps we could just hold on to this agenda item for a few minutes and see if he comes back. There he is, and his hand is raised. Here he comes.
I'm just trying to expedite your agenda, Madam Chair. That's
No,
all I'm
I
trying to do here.
very much appreciate that. I know we're trying not to go till 11:30, quarter to midnight. Mr.
Zulus is
There's
frowned.
Mr. Hiss. Do you see him, Hillary? Can you get him into the meeting here?
The greatest voice in the town of Milton.
I know.
Trying it one more time. It looks
There
like
he is.
He's there.
Good evening, Mr. Hiss. You are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Yes, you were broken up before. We can hear you now, which is really odd because it says you're muted. So I don't know if you're also on your phone, but welcome and thank you very much for your letter that determines we need a remote town meeting. If you'd like to walk us through it. Oh no, did we lose him again? I think we did.
we did. If we get him back in the meeting, I'm gonna leave him as an attendee and see if the
Okay.
request for connection might help.
Okay. All right, so let's just hold on to this for a moment and
Do you want to vote? And then we can, at least we'll
He's
take a
back.
vote. We can come back and listen to it. All right.
okay. Hello, Mr. Hiss. Hopefully it works this time. You're broken up, I think. That's perhaps you'd want to call in on your phone.
I think he's on his phone, Madam Chair. Isn't that a phone?
Right.
I don't see his.
No. Okay. Oh, the next item is, there he is, very long. Hello, Mr. Hiss. There you are. You're frozen.
There.
Still frozen.
I will.
Yeah, we're not able to hear you, and your image is frozen as well. So I don't know if that means you can hear me. I'm glad you're Mike.
Madam Chair, should we vote on the motion and then if
I
we're able to
think-
get Mr. Hiss back
Right.
later, then
Exactly.
take his comments?
I think we need to move this on. I think we had a second, but I don't remember who seconded.
I think I did or Arthur did.
I thought you did. Okay. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon,
Yes.
Mr. Doyle,
Yes.
Mr. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Zulus,
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Okay. And if we can get Mr. Hiss back later, we'd love to hear from him. Our virtual town meetings have been such a boon during this time that we've been able to move business forward. I mean, just listening to Greg Peacock, he was very impressed with our annual town meeting being able to be held before the June 30th date. Item number 10, and I see we have our town planner, our planning director, Tim Zarinsky, with us, is the discussion approval of shared streets and spaces grant application for Franklin Street Winter Plaza. And Mr. Zarinsky also was at the Traffic Commission, and Mr. Wells and I were both there as well, listening. And there have been a lot of emails, lots of great questions. And I don't know, Mr. Zarinsky, if you heard the comment that was made in public comment asking why this when there are other needs in town. But I will turn it over to you. And I don't know if you're going to do a presentation, but I would trust Hillary has that, or you're able to put it up for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for having me on. First of all, I was listening in at the beginning of the meeting to Ms. McAvoy's comments, and I actually thought she raised a lot of really important points, quite frankly. And if she's still listening, if she's still on the meeting, I would really love it if she reached out to my office, because I think she raised a number of issues that I've been giving a lot of thought to since I started in the position. You know, I don't mind saying it here because I want to be held accountable to it. It's one of my really high priorities to get some community planning done in the western part of town. I've got some irons in the fire right now, not just with 40B, but with some other plans that we want to put in motion. But I think, you know, in the medium term future, we really do want to get out there and do some community planning and see kind of what the needs are out in the western part of town. So Ms. McAvoy, if you're still listening, give me a buzz or shoot me an email. So I do have a few slides, if Hillary could put them up. So we began talking about this a little bit last week, but just to reintroduce folks to the idea, we are considering an application to the Commonwealth's Shared Winter Streets and Spaces grant program. The summertime iteration of this grant program, we received to do the Brook Road Diet, which reduced the lanes on Brook Road and installed some temporary bike lanes, which I think has been a pretty good success so far. There are a lot of different components to this grant program. One of them is a Main Streets component, which really seeks to give towns and municipalities the ability to have access to technical assistance via urban design and transportation planning to do some really targeted, temporary, quick build interventions in the public way to allow for people to be able to gather and to really, you know, do things that you would normally do inside, outside, because as we all know, you know, there are restrictions on indoor dining and indoor gathering and capacity restrictions on all sorts of indoor activities I think there's a pretty strong public health consensus that gathering outside is a lot safer, and doing your business outside is a lot safer. And so, especially, given the capacity restrictions on indoor dining that are in place, we thought that it was a good idea to pursue this, to maybe give some of the restaurants and some of the businesses in the East Milton Business District a little bit of breathing room, and some space for their patrons to maybe grab some takeout and enjoy it in a nice, kind of pleasant, enjoyable atmosphere. As it relates to, is this a high priority? Is this a low priority? The thing that I'll say is that this is, the technical assistance is free. If we win the grant is free. It's been a little bit of work for my department, but a lot of the legwork has been done by Tool Design Group, which is our design consultant. And one of the things that we're really trying to pursue is some shared stewardship with the business community of this space, in terms of the maintenance and the operations, if we're successful in winning the grant and getting it installed. So, I take to heart the idea that there are a lot of really grave issues in town. I think we're trying to work on a lot of different things. I think as anyone that watches these meetings knows is, I think we're all doing our very best to really tackle some of the issues in town. But this is something that we think could be a boost to the business district. It's our biggest business district. It's really an important part of our tax base. It's an important part of our community. Given the fact that the assistance and the money is out there for the taking, we thought it was a good investment of an amount of time on the part of the department. So before I start going through these slides, let me just say that what you're about to see is really the program is designed to be a temporary, quick build intervention. And I stress the term temporary because a lot of the commentary that we've gotten, which I've read every letter that's come into both my office and to the select board's office, is about, process and outreach. And some people, felt, they read about it in the newspaper or they saw it on Facebook, or, how come, we didn't have a more broad kind of outreach program. And, I used the term last week, and I'll use it again. When you've got a program like this, the term that I like to use is that the pilot is the process. If we were talking about, digging up the curb or rerouting traffic, in a permanent fashion, I think that's something that, you really do owe it to people to sort of do a really deep dive into what are the implications, what kind of analysis needs to go in this, because this is meant to be temporary. And you'll see in the renderings that, there's nothing permanent about any of this. My goal is to get this up in an afternoon and take it down in an afternoon, if necessary. And so I think, one of the things that we're hoping for is if the application, crosses this threshold tonight and we eventually, hopefully, win it from the Department of Transportation, that not only is it going to be something that is, nice for the business district, but I'm hoping to learn a lot of lessons about this type of intervention that could potentially be deployed throughout town, not just for sort of reclaiming public space for people, but also for redirecting cut-through traffic, slowing traffic down on our side streets, which is a really important priority of the work of the Traffic Mitigation Committee, and I think everyone in town is interested in that. So I'll go through these slides really quick just to give people a flavor of what we're talking about. The slide that's up right now is just kind of shows a general outline of the area that would be created by this closure, and the principle behind this is you would close off Franklin Street right at Adams Street, so that you couldn't make the right or left from Adams onto Franklin. And then about 50 feet into the street, about where the alleyway behind the Abbey Park building is, there would be another closure, via Jersey barriers, and then hopefully some type of more attractive and pleasant plantings, would create essentially a dead end on Franklin Street. So we'll see the traffic pattern a little bit better later, but essentially creating sort of the blockage at Adams and then the dead end kind of mid-block, still providing access to the Falcone lot and to the Starbucks lot, but that would come from Bassett Street and not from Adams. So if you could advance to the next slide. This just shows some of the design principles that our design consultant is kind of thinking about. Quick and clever, cheap materials, easy materials, nothing
We lost your audio.
that really requires a ton of really intensive work. Can you hear?
You're a bit in and out.
What about now?
Yes, you're better.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
What was the last thing I said?
Let's see.
You're on number one, quick and clever about the furniture that was not too expensive.
Okay. Okay, that's good. We want to, block the wind and catch the sun. Obviously, if you're going to be outside, we want people to be bundled up, but we also want to sort of, do what we can to create a pleasant atmosphere for people in the wintertime. I think a lot of these principles speak for themselves. So Hillary, if you want to advance to the next one. So this is a rendering of what we hope this would look like. So again, you see that kind of that blockage at Adams Street. There's the opportunity to do some temporary kind of vinyl kind of stickers on the asphalt. Part of what we're thinking is, that can be a sort of a fun artistic component, but also really kind of do some markings for distancing, quite frankly, because one of the goals of this is to we're not trying to create a destination. We're not trying to attract huge crowds, obviously, because even though we are outdoors, we want to, give people an opportunity to do things safely and responsibly. So, everything that you see here in terms of capacity is going to be designed to, maintain a safe capacity for people, so that we're not programming the space with events or giveaways or movies or anything. This is really meant to be, especially during the pandemic, more of a passive space for people to be, outdoors in a nice environment, but not something where there's going to be a line around the block to, be at the Winter Plaza. So you see some of the seating that we're looking at. There's the potential to do, if we can get an electrical hookup, to do a projector screen to maybe put some art or maybe some menus for takeout for some of the restaurants up on the wall over there. We'd like to maybe do some type of a concession in that kind of snack stand you see in the back. That's dependent upon, finding someone, hopefully an existing business in the business district that will be interested in occupying that, and actually finding the sort of physical kind of object. I think it's tough to source that sort of thing. If you can advance to the next slide, Hillary. So this is just a ground level view of kind of what it would look like. Again, everything is movable. If you want to get close to someone in your pod, you can sort of move those chairs around. If you need to sort of space yourself out from folks maybe you're not familiar with, you can do that. The deputy town planner is finding something hilarious behind me, so sorry about that. There's, the lights that you see up above are, we source some solar power lights so that they actually don't depend on an electrical hookup. So we're just trying to create, again, a nice kind of pleasant environment in the street. Hillary, if you can go to the last slide. So this is the traffic pattern that you would see created as a result of this blockage. I think it's pretty self-evident to anyone that's familiar with the square and driving around over there. But you would sort of, if you wanted to get onto Franklin Street to access the Falcone lot or the Starbucks lot, you'd have to sort of, go up Adams, make the right onto Granite, make the right onto Bassett, make the right onto Franklin. The orange spots that you see are detour signs that we would be placing. The arrows kind of show the direction of where that sign will be facing. We heard some feedback at the Traffic Commission the other day that, it's a little bit off this map, but Granite Place is an important place to not just sort of have some signage, but also to monitor, because it's kind of the first opportunity to get into the neighborhood if you're not going to use Franklin Street, if you're coming from Quincy. So, this is something that we've shown the Traffic Commission. They're aware of this. We're putting some thought into exactly how to deploy some of the signage. But this is the last slide, and before I kind of end my remarks here, I did want to say that we have done a bit of outreach. We've talked with the Chamber of Commerce. We've talked with the executive board of the East Milton Neighborhood Association. We've spoken directly with the abutting businesses, both Abbey Park and Starbucks. And then obviously, through some of the publicity that this has gotten through social media and through the Milton Times, we've gotten a fair amount of feedback. So I just wanted to kind of raise a couple issues that have come up, and I'm citing an email that we got recently from the East Milton Neighborhood Association that I think raises some of the issues that we're taking into account and we're going to be following up on. One of them being delivery trucks and loading. There's, quite frankly, illegal loading that happens on Franklin Street quite a bit. Those loading trucks are going to be hopefully going to the loading zone on Granite Ave or loading in the parking lots like they're supposed to. But if not, that's something that we definitely need to be monitoring. What is the behavior of those loading trucks that are going to be, no longer able to use Franklin Street. The sort of the closing time of the Winter Plaza, it's been suggested that it kind of, shut down when the restaurants shut down. I think that's a fine idea. There's no kind of, you can't lock up the street, but I think to the extent that the lights go off, the furniture gets locked up, it's no longer a space for people to be in. I think it's a fine idea. In terms of monitoring the traffic impacts, again, as I said earlier, the pilot is the process. And so I think, we know that there's going to be traffic impacts. And I think the understanding is, do those impacts outweigh what could potentially be the positive aspects of this in terms of, generating interest in the square and sort of getting people to use the space and really patronize our businesses. And so, a lot of that is qualitative and quite frankly, anecdotal observation. We've got plenty of eyes on the square, so I don't have any doubt that we'll get a lot of feedback as to how things are going. But to the extent that we have the ability to monitor traffic both before and after the installation, I think we're going to try to do through the Traffic Commission. Whether it's at the intersection at Adams and Granite, or it's at Granite Place, or in multiple locations, if that's a possibility. We do want to, pursue that just so that we've got, to the extent that we can, some really hard empirical data about what exactly is going on. In terms of maintenance and cleaning and storage of these materials, as I said earlier, we're really trying to partner with the business community in East Milton. They're very enthusiastic about this proposal. I think they see it as a real asset to the business district. It'll really, help them out in a time where, it's really kind of dire straits for a lot of small businesses throughout the world, quite frankly. But, especially here in our community. So I think they're very enthusiastic about, chipping in terms of, snow removal, litter removal, sanitizing the furniture. We've discussed all of these components of kind of the maintenance and the monitoring of the space. Those are issues that still need to be kind of ironed out. I think we, have to get to a point where we're saying, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. But we have a kind of a broad kind of general understanding that, a lot of these businesses do want to chip in and make sure that the space is successful. So that'll be something, between, now and an award decision, probably towards the end of February, we'll have all of that ironed out in terms of, who's going to be taking care of that space. And then I think finally, this is something that's not officially a part of the application, but I do think it's worth considering, is a sort of a sunset clause. What is going to be the term of this, intervention? It's been suggested again by the folks in East Milton that there be a sort of a 3-month, pilot of this thing. So from whenever the installation starts to 3 months. And I actually, we can talk about what our appetite is for that, but I do think that it's a good idea. My preference is that, we give this thing a chance to succeed through as many, seasons as we can. We're going to hit late winter. We're going to be into the spring. I'd love to get into the early summer and just see what happens. But I do think that, a 3-month term, give or take, is really something that is probably appropriate, and I think would give people comfort in terms of, we said this is going to be temporary, and we want to, if it's successful, we want to have that broader conversation both with this board and with the broader community about, is this something that we want to make a permanent part of East Milton? If it's not successful, if the impacts on traffic or otherwise are just intolerable and it's not something that we can manage, then as I said earlier, you pack up the furniture, we own it if we win the grant. So anything that is part of this installation belongs to the town. It could be deployed elsewhere. And like I said, it's quick build to the point of, it hopefully can be taken down in the course of a few hours. And so I think, defining the term of the project, I think is a smart idea. So those are some of the things that we've gotten in terms of feedback from folks. I'm calling out the points that the neighborhood association made, but we've heard similar things from other folks. And we're definitely interested in again, I think there's a fair amount of support for this proposal. I think some people have, concerns that I think are understandable, but what I would say to folks is, again, this is something that's quick and easy and free, if we get it. And so, I hope people give it a chance. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I understand there may be some opportunity for public comment. So happy to hear what people have to say.
You're muted, Melinda.
I'm muted for a change. Thank you. Do members have questions or comments for Mr. Zorminski? Mr. Wells?
I do, Madam Chair, but I'll wait if any of the other members want to go first, because I did, as you know, I spoke at the Traffic Commission yesterday. But I want to speak in a different light tonight. So if anyone else has something, then go first. I'm fine.
Well,
yes, Mr. Zulus.
I wonder if I think Chief King is here. I wonder if we could hear Chief King weigh in on the traffic impacts.
If we're going to do that, then can I speak first then, Michael? I know the chief's away. I know the chief is here. He and I talked today. Then I'd like to lay this out then first if the chief's going to speak. Is that all right with you, Madam Chair?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I think you said you'll speak now then. Okay.
Okay. So I'm speaking here in three aspects, as you heard me speak yesterday. I mean, from a negative point of view, I didn't bring it up yesterday. I do live at the intersection of Granite and Belcher, which, from a historical point of view, going back to several years ago when I was chair of the Traffic Commission, we did look. Katie might remember. Howard Stein Hudson, before the deck project, did an East Milton parking and traffic study for the town at the behest of the select board. And one of the things that they and Mr. Cock had talked about was on the cut through traffic, looking at both, I think it was Granite Place and even Washington Street as temporary do not enter restrictions, but you can't shut off everything. So I understand on Granite Place, you're going to take, some of the brunt of that. But from an intelligence point of view, absent, this is strictly on traffic. From an intelligence point of view, I think it's worthy for us, both from traffic dead ending, because we had talked then about dead ending Franklin Street, recommending it to the select board as a temporary measure to see the effects. The fact that we have the capability to count traffic, collect all this data, and see the effects of stopping any right-hand, left-hand turn from Adams Street onto Franklin, even if it's just a 3-month period of time, I think can provide, and I believe, I don't want to speak for Chief King, he can speak after me, I believe will provide us a great deal of intelligence as far as cut-through traffic. From a operational point of view, to my neighbor Bernadette, I hear her point. this is something, and Suzanne Brown mentioned this as well yesterday, that when the deck is finished a year from now, it would be my dream, and I'm sure many others who worked on the deck in the beginning, including Joe Manning himself, to see something like this, to see this deck have life. I think Suzanne Brown's final comments yesterday were, if the deck were done today, to put something like this on the deck, and in that aspect, I agree 100%. The last thing I do want to say is that from a community perspective, Tim came up with this idea. This wasn't the restaurants, it wasn't the business. They agreed with it and they're enthusiastic about it, but I want to give credit where credit is due, was the planning department who had the vision to do this. But I do think that, if we do this, there's a lot of positive that we could gain from this in so many ways that I think it warrants us doing what we can do to try. It's only temporary. If it is when we closed Adams Street, and as Katie may remember, I was the last one as chief and chair of the traffic commission to want to close Adams Street, but the proof was in the pudding, and I came to accept it and grasp it and understand why it was done these years later. And I concur with that today. I truly do believe that there's some benefits to this in so many ways, and I thank Tim for doing this, for trying to do something in the face of such a negative time in our history when so much has been taken away, to try and bring something back that we can add as an asset for the citizens of our whole town to use. So those are my comments, and I know I was long-winded, so thank you for that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Welcome, Chief King. As always, it's wonderful to have you with us. I believe you probably have some specific things to share with us about traffic and anything else that you think we should know. We're happy to have you here.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I really just had 3 concerns, and, Tim, credit to him, he reached out to me very early on, asked me my opinion. I gave him 3 concerns, and he said, he'd, factor them in and try and address them. And, I'm confident he's pretty diligent with what he says. So, that was done. But basically just, the concerns I had, one is the volume of cars that utilize Franklin Street. A large number do use it on a daily basis. So, my concerns were just something to think about, I should say, more than a concern is, with that traffic all being diverted, it's going to impact the lights at Adams and Granite. We'll have to handle more traffic. So there might be an issue of having to sequence those lights slightly differently. And same in the opposite direction. Cars that can't go the other way on Franklin Street are probably going to jump up to Church Street and have to exit there. So I think it impacts those 2 sets of lights, and that should be evaluated whether the time and sequence should remain or at least be monitored during any period of this. Also discussed was just the impacts on the other side streets, Bassett, Granite Place, Belcher Circle. I think we'll see an increase in traffic. To what extent, I really can't say without an actual traffic count and study, but just something to consider. My second concern was delivery trucks. Again, Tim mentioned this, and they do use Franklin Street now, obviously legally, illegally, they kind of make do, and it's a source of complaints. So, all those trucks are going to be diverted, and where are they going to be diverted to? I know we say hopefully the loading zone, and I know enforcement's an aspect of that, but also human nature and reality. A guy with a 2-wheeler pushing heavy loads off a truck probably is going to push him a couple blocks, and we know they're going to try and find a spot probably as close to Franklin as they can. So my second issue was just that, keeping in mind the delivery trucks. And my third issue was really just that I feel a partial closure is always slightly more confusing than a full closure, meaning not an issue at Franklin and Adams, but on the Franklin and Bassett side, when the closure is farther down the street, it's a little more confusing for motorists than if it's at the intersecting street. And because of this, people might still enter either accidentally or intentionally. And this is more of an issue with a temporary closure as opposed to a permanent one, because people might think they can sneak through or might not realize it's closed. We might have an issue there if that's a truck or something, like how is it going to have room to U-turn, or is it going to have to back all the way down? Whereas if the closure was at Bassett, which I realize it can't because of the driveways, but they would never make the turn. So the partial closure, signs can address that probably. And like I said, Tim, is pretty thorough, and I'm sure he's thinking through these three concerns. But those are my concerns. At the end of the day, the police department isn't the planning department. There's lots of considerations. Traffic is one of them, but I think there's a lot of other positive reasons to consider such projects, and that's really the planning board and your decision. So at the end of the day, I respect it. These are just thoughts, some concerns I had, but at the end of the day, the police will accept and work with any decision on it.
Thank you, Chief King. Does anyone have a question or a comment for Chief King? Mr. Doyle, and you're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair, on both counts. And Tim, thank you again for a very thorough presentation. I just wanted to follow up on one point from yesterday's Traffic Commission discussion, and that was the fact that if there were some difficulties that came along, that there was always the capability of rolling out. And what I'd just like to ask is if you might be able to, ahead of time, identify what those measurements might be that would warrant a rolling up, and probably have in the rollout this design, and this is probably something you already have in your mind, being the good planner that you are, those ingredients that would look at the continuation of this possibility in the future. If the grant is, if the select board approves, B, if the grant is awarded, and C, the rollout of the project. Just a comment.
Thank you. And
You broke up, Tim.
those are great questions, and I really appreciate Chief King being here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear? Okay. I just want to thank Mr. Doyle and also Chief King for raising those concerns. I had reached out to Chief King early in December, and those are concerns that we've been sort of carrying with us, throughout the consideration of this project. And so I think, as this starts to get more and more real, we'll have to kind of figure out, exactly, again, where the signage goes, what the signage looks like. There'll have to be a public education campaign, I think, through all of the usual channels, and then also with the businesses, with their delivery trucks. I know it's a kind of a love-hate relationship with that sort of thing, but hopefully we can sort of get people used to the idea of this in terms of their traffic patterns. And so I think again, we know that these impacts are going to happen, and I think we want to manage them, we want to monitor them, and we want to to Mr. Doyle's point, I think I can name a few things that if they happened, we would want to pull back on this immediately. Most of them have to do with safety. If it becomes clear that this is creating an unsafe environment.
You broke up again.
Environment for pedestrians or motorists or whatever. What about now?
Now you're better. I think we did actually hear that full statement about safety.
Okay. Great. I think again, between now and the application period, and then from the application period to the awards period, I think there is time to figure out what are the obviously unexpected things happen, and sometimes you can't predict them. But I think determining, okay, what are the kind of immediate things where if there is some sort of a safety incident, whether it's police, fire, traffic, etc. I think we would give serious consideration into pulling back. And that's kind of, there are indirect impacts too. If traffic gets to a point where things are backed up, and creating, an untenable environment in the square, whether it's on Adam Street or Granite or some of the side streets. I think we're going to want to, pull back. But I also think that kind of underscores the importance of, monitoring the situation, because again, if you see an uptick in traffic, does this rise to the level of this is an unsafe environment, or this is a kind of natural kind of outgrowth of changing the traffic pattern? So I think, a lot of it is judgment call, but also I think that's something we definitely want to think about of really kind of coming up with some specific circumstances by which, we would say, all right, we got to pull this thing. And I think that has to do with the conversation about the sunset period. So, I'm open to input on that from my colleagues, on the traffic commission or from folks on the Board of Selectmen. So that's an ongoing and continuing conversation.
So it sounds as if you'll have to continue working to monitor metrics with public safety, with the traffic commission, and obviously, if you're having to look at light sequencing, and you're basically going to have a team plus the chamber for some of these other issues like maintenance, cleaning, and storage. One thing I'm happy with the 3 months. I feel a little more comfortable with it being 3 months since people are so concerned, even though as I've told people, I think it's a real strength that this can be rolled up so quickly. But it's a matter of, that dedication to monitoring, I think. But I'd also like us to be able to have the, make sure there's an option to extend it if it's going really well and people are finding it of real value. As far as the cleaning, maintenance, storage, all of those things, I'm wondering if among all the signage, I know people, are concerned about sign pollution, but maybe there is a number and a point person for people to call if something, seems amiss, if things aren't being cleaned up or something like that, just so that there's a person to call and get something taken care of. Not that everything is that person's responsibility. And I am concerned about, especially in addition to the delivery trucks, the Chief King's observation that a partial closure can be really confusing, and you don't want a very large truck getting to the end of that. So, I hope there is a good solution with signage and maybe markings on the road or something like that to prevent people from going too far. We actually do have a hand raised, and since we do have public comment, I'd like to recognize Candy Brown for 3 minutes. And please go ahead. You can, wait, she's, lots of people actually. Okay, since it's 9:18 and we have a lot of hands, people will be limited to 2 minutes apiece because the board has a lot of business to get through, and there's time and there are other channels to go through, and we also had extensive comments last week. So I actually did call Candy Brown first, so let's have her speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, and could you please give us your address as well?
Yes, I live at 18 Brackett Street, right around the corner from Mr. Wells. I spoke yesterday at the Traffic Commission, but I wanted to talk more about some of the other aspects, not just traffic. But I'm glad you talked about safety, which is number one for me. I was a little disappointed though yesterday when we talked about the traffic flow pattern and how you did not include the extension down to Granite Place and around Belcher Circle, that wasn't part of the whole neighborhood being affected. I really think that tells the true story, and wish you would have added that in for future meetings. I would like to know where the commercial vehicles are going to go, not just the recognition that they don't know where to go. Tonight I went downtown between 8 and 8:30. There's an 18-wheeler parked right next to Starbucks. There's no one policing that area. So, what are we going to do for those trucks that need to have a place to unload to support those businesses? That would be a question I had, would like to get an answer to. The maintenance, another concern. I did notice over the summer when we had the park open, when there was a gentleman that really wanted to, find an opportunity for other people to use that park. The toys and games were strewn everywhere. I jogged through the park about 4 times a week, and I would be constantly kind of picking up everything as I went through there. So I just don't think that something that's just kind of left open to the public, there needs to be ownership to really someone to be accountable for that. And then also within talking about safety and the 6-foot distance for COVID, there's also a fire hydrant right on the sidewalk for Abbey Park. And the clearance around that, thinking of the Jersey barriers, what type of opportunities do, what would the fire officials think of that for that fire hydrant? That's the only fire hydrant in the immediate area around that. I'm not an expert on the fire hydrants, but I wanted to bring that up as something that should be considered in the planning and design. Lastly, I think.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Please email Mr. Zarinsky with your last point, because I'm sure that that he's very interested in, as are we. You can copy us as well. Thank you. I apologize, but we do have a lot to get through.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thomas, correct me if I get your name wrong. Buchow, Mr. Buchow, you're recognized. If you could correct me and then give us your address.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Board. I'm Tomas Buchow. It's a difficult one to pronounce for sure. I live at 8 Cantwell Road. I'm just speaking in support of the Franklin Street Winter Plaza project. Just a couple of key points, because I know you're short on time for a long agenda. The key point, it supports local businesses during a particularly tough season that we're coming into right now. So I think that's really something to look at. It gives Milton residents a novel outdoor amenity and a place to safely gather. Again, not huge crowds, but just a place for the community to get together, even in small numbers. I believe it would encourage walking, cycling, and local use, which I'm a huge advocate for across the board. In these isolating times, anything we can do to build community should be explored. Creative ideas and opportunities such as this one, particularly where there's very little, if no cost to us, should absolutely be given a chance. To echo Chief Wells, I really look forward to the time when, East Milton Square is this great place with the deck and all this stuff. I really see so much promise there. So I hope you'll work toward making East Milton Square a walkable, vibrant town space. Thank you all so much for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Okay, and next, Rich Beeler, if you would give us your address, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Rich Beeler, I live at 77 Church Street, just behind the square. Yeah, I just wanted to call in, and I know it was limited time, so I'm sure you heard a lot of comments, but for one, I'm for the businesses, right? I mean, most people over in East Milton, my neighbors, we're up there all the time, and we're spending money and enjoying what we have, and sometimes we take it for granted that we can walk up there and enjoy it, it's great. But one of the things I'm worried about is just, quite honestly, there's been a lot of, my family's been here for over 40 years, and there's been a lot of change over those 40 years, and we do hear different times, hey, we want to do this or we want to do that, and we'll monitor it, or we'll work on it, or maybe we'll reel it back in if it doesn't work out. But from our experience, or at least my experience, you don't usually reel things back in. And if you say something's temporary, and then but you don't put any parameters on it, like end dates, things have a way of just kind of keep going and going and going. So I would be a huge fan, like as Chair Collins, as you mentioned, like having a sunset. That sounds like a fantastic idea. I mean, I want to help the businesses out. I mean, this could be a great idea. I wish over the highway we could do something. So if that was done, I would be a huge proponent of that. But I do wish that, the board came to the neighbors a little sooner so we could have figured something else out. But, if we are at the point where you folks are going to vote yes, I really think that you need to put some time into thinking, how do we minimize the longevity of this? How do we make it so neighbors have a voice? Things like that. And so I'm just a little worried about things when we talk about temporary, but we're going to try seasons, multiple seasons. We want to see how it works. Maybe we make it permanent. There's got to be an opportunity for neighbors to get back and talk about it. I mean, I can remember before COVID hit, one of the streets was closed down. It took me 20 minutes to get out of the neighborhood. And so we just don't want to see those things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler.
Chair Collins, can I address some of Mr. Beeler's comments?
Absolutely.
Rich, thanks for your input. I'm with you on the sunset. I understand this. It's a little bit before my time, but I understand there's been some feedback regarding the Adams Street closure. I'm not interested in being a cautionary tale. So I do think that the sunset is something that I think is probably integral to this. There's targeted outreach to certain resident groups and certain businesses about this project. I think, when we talk about a sunset and we talk about, the question of, okay, is this going to be a permanent thing or are we going to reel this back? I think that absolutely 100%, that's the type of thing that, we owe people a more sustained and a more comprehensive conversation with all people that have a stake in this in the community. And so happy to, bake into the process, not just the sunset, but sort of the conversation around the sunset of like, okay, how did this go? What did we like? What did we not like? And what's the future of this thing in a much broader, more comprehensive way. So I'm 100% on board with that concept.
Thank you, Mr. Zawinski. Yes, I mean, we didn't keep up the installation on the deck, and I think that we can do the same thing here, where we have that and a conversation to sort of see how it went is always in order. So, Elaine Benson, if you would give us your address, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
67 Granite Place. So I love this proposed pilot. I also want to extend sincere gratitude to our planning and community development team, especially Allison and Tim, for their very creative and thoughtful problem solving and their initiative and working so hard to support our local restaurants, especially when there's been, they've been at, functioning at significantly reduced and non-sustainable capacity due to the pandemic. And for taking advantage of a grant that so many of our neighboring communities have submitted for. I understand that there's some concern over traffic and commercial deliveries. However, I feel that what's consistently overlooked is how often Franklin is used as a cut through for those attempting to circumvent the light at Granite and Adams. And I also, as previously mentioned, Franklin is not an approved loading zone in Milton. So unfortunately, this hasn't been consistently enforced, but it could, and time would tell, mitigate some traffic and perhaps offset some of the increased traffic from the partial closure. I also anticipate that there to be a pretty quick adjustment for those who frequent East Milton Square and the park in the lots on Franklin. So I think, the fact is that there's no actual loss in terms of number of parking spaces. And I think that this could be of tremendous benefit to the community. And, as shared, it's a pilot, easily dismantled if there's any significant issues that, arise or arose. And so I just encourage the select board to support this pilot, to give it a chance to succeed, and to trust in the expertise of our planning and community development team, and recognize that this could help to build support for other similar innovative projects here in Milton. Thank you.
Thank you. And Carolyn McDonald, if you could please give us your address and your statement.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sure. My name's Carolyn McDonald. I live at 30 Brackett Street. I've been here for 25 years. I have to say something just as after I hear everybody speak. I do agree with Rich, who spoke about things becoming permanent that are, set out as temporary. And My question really is in gathering this data that you're gathering, this data, I'm wondering about the validity of the data, given the fact that these times that we live in are really not representative of what it is like during, let's say, normal times. So during the time where you're going to have this winter plaza erected and measured data, it's not really measuring a time of normalcy. So I can't say that that data can be extrapolated to a time when we head back to normalcy. So any of the data that's gathered, I find it hard to understand how you're going to extrapolate that. I really struggle with that. So, and I can't see how something that's temporary should become permanent if the data that it's gathered is during a time that's not permanent. So I have a hard time with the whole project. I've lived here for 25 years. I grew kids up. I have the same dream for East Milton Square, but unfortunately my kids they didn't live here long enough to see what the dream actually wanted to be or what people want it to be. So, maybe the next generation, but I would be really careful with any data that you collect. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Okay, and Suzanne Brown, if you could give us your address and your statement, please. You're still muted, Ms. Brown. Okay, there you are.
Here I am. Okay. Suzanne Brown, I live at 566 Adams Street. I sent a letter to all of the board members along with pictures for the delivery trucks where they stand now. In shutting down Franklin Street, you are forcing those delivery trucks to my street, which I already have a problem with. I understand there's a loading zone. I understand Benson wants to figure out, believe there's a loading zone. That loading zone has never been used. Chief Wells, you talked about shutting down a street. The street was Adams Street when Novara was going in. We were going to shut it down at Duggan Lane, and that never came to fruition because of traffic and because of use. But now you're shutting down Franklin Street. So I don't know what has changed. If anything, there's more traffic than when Novara went in. Slide 3 and 4 shows fire pits and heaters, but yet you're going to put fire pits and heaters in and they're going to be unsupervised. Slide 5, I don't think Tim gave Church Street enough credit as far as cut through traffic. And the safety capacity, he wants it safe, but yet that's not going to be monitored. I've been at every meeting and called every person involved. The Chamber of Commerce is supposedly going to lock it up and police it, but yet there's no actual people or associations named that can be held accountable. And before you guys vote, I really think definitely a sunset, 3 months, so it can be looked at. If it works, hey, it works, okay? But then I also need to know the factors that it's going to take to shut it down. Because if the delivery trucks, or if I can't get up my street and it's going to take me 20 minutes to get home, that isn't right. To get up my driveway. Right now I'm on 3 light cycles. And I understand Chief King said the light cycle is going to have to be redone. People block the box, jump the light. It's just not what it should be. And as I said with Chief Walls, that figure or configuration should be on the overpass. I don't think you should be shutting down a street. I think you're all going to vote for it and say, yeah, you got to, the pilot, and you got to do it. But there is going to be impact to this neighborhood, and you have to have some fallback when I have it or when it happens. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate people sticking to the time. Very patient. Mr. Dennehy.
I think you have one more hand, Madam Chair.
Oh. Thank you. Jim Finnegan, could you give us your address? And you have 2 minutes.
My address is 71 Emerson Road.
Thank you.
I actually started out kind of thinking that I wasn't really in favor of this, and I'm more neutral now. I just would like everybody to consider that this is a quality of life issue for all the East Milton residents. Once that area closes at night, we still have to live with the area, and it should be cleaned up. I worry about rodents, the kind of thing that brings to East Milton Square. I'm also worried about the traffic itself. And to Chief King's point about Bassett and Franklin, you know, the guy in the 40-foot tractor trailer who banged a U-turn there last week at 7 o'clock in the morning was quite resourceful. So I think that just sort of seems to be something that needs to be looked at. I'm not against this, but I do see this as an experiment and there is data to be gathered. But at some point that data needs to be reviewed and we need to see if this is feasible going long-term. So I do agree with the sunset, 3 months if it works. And I wouldn't really necessarily say it's a winter plaza. It's going to break into spring and that's fine. And I do agree with Richard Wells that ultimately this would be a great thing to put on the deck in East Milton Square. That's what it's there for. And, that should be what it's used for. I also just do not want this to be table service for Abbey Park. I know they have tables out there on the sidewalk when the weather is good. There should be some kind of separation there too. But I thank you all for listening. And, if this goes through, I hope it works out. Just remember the quality of life issues for the East Milton Square residents. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. And thank you, Mr. Dennehy, for your eagle eyes. Make sure. Okay. Great.
Madam Chair?
Great. I think that's it. Okay. Thank you. Do members have any other questions, concerns, comments? I'm not sure that we're really exactly ready to vote on this. I think we have, as Mr. Zawinski said, he has some things that he's still working on, and we've talked about some features that we'd like to see. So, Mr. Zulus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to focus on the sunset and the pullback.
Right.
And if we have a 3-month sunset, the question is how and under, as many people pointed out, how and under what circumstances we pull back, and then who decides on the pullback. I think we need to make clear that if it's this board that decides the pullback, what are the circumstances? And also we may need to delegate in the event that there's an emergency situation. We may need to delegate to the town administrator the pullback. And then beyond that, I think if we're going to do this and have a 3-month sunset, I would say we should have it on our agenda at every meeting for residents to come in and provide feedback and to provide public comment on how it's going, because it seems to me that's a major concern for the residents, that if we're going to try this, we don't want to just say, well, we'll see at the end of 3 months. We want to monitor it along the way, and then if we need to pull back, we can do it. So those are the things that I would suggest to Tim, so that I think that the sense from the neighborhood is that I have is that if we're going to do it, we got to put it on a pretty short leash.
Mm-hmm. And I could go along with putting it on every regular agenda, but we've been having a lot of extra meetings, so I'd like to just.
How about monthly, once a month? We put it on once a month for a review. We have a big agendas here.
Well, right. Well, I was thinking once a month we could, and I'm sure that Mr. Zawinski would give us a regular report, but I am concerned that we have someone who, if this needs to be rolled up quickly, and we can't call a meeting, that could be done, or a modification or something like that. So I agree, Mr. Zulus, that's important to consider. Mr. Wells?
I think Michael, in this, if it had to be done, I think we could deem that to the town administrator. Right. Where he's our operational person. He can do that anytime. I just want to comment on just one quick thing. And you heard me speak at the chair.
Mm-hmm.
With regard to the loading dock, and Chief King said, I hope he didn't leave yet. If he did, I'm sure he can hear me. And I said this to him, and I said this to the Chair Chase. We have so much going on in the school, so much potential and possibility here. Now is the time for us to address the loading issue. Suzanne Brown is exactly correct. They come, and this is going to take 3 bodies to do it. It needs buy-in from the businesses who use them, the police department who enforces it, and us as a town. All 3. We have to do this. In Boston, they do it by hours when you work. Like, I'm not sure which resident talked about the truck on Franklin Street. It's Starbucks. They come at 10 o'clock. Starbucks is going to have to, if you're going to use this, you're going to have to live by the rules. And as you heard, I was very passionate about this yesterday. I'm not going to let this go. This is something, as this square evolves, we have to do this. The second thing with regard to Mrs. McDonald's comments and the data. The systems that the town owns right now, as Michael knows very well, are unbelievable. If 600, and they collect data all the time, they collect data when you don't even know about it. So if 600 cars went down Granite Place pre-COVID and only 300 go now, and you put this in and it increases by X%, you know the difference, whether it's COVID or pre-COVID. So I'm very, it's not the main interest, but my main interest, and I agree with everything else almost everyone said, is the intelligence from a traffic point of view is part of this, that you can really get a lot from this. And this will help us going forward, because we have, as you saw at the truck, there's another proposal yesterday, there's a Falcone proposal. These are things we need to know. So there's that benefit there. I don't want to let that go. And for the residents who directly who are concerned about those trucks, it's incumbent upon us to deal with this now and find a permanent solution. So thank you for that. I know I was long, but I don't want to let that go. This has been, as Katie remembers, when my last year as chief, we voted one on Adams Street. It got moved to Granite. We have to make this work.
Right.
Thank you.
I think we're all in agreement. Thank you. Ms. Conlon?
Madam Chair, I have a question. Is there any sensitivity to voting this tonight for purposes of submitting the application? Because I think Mr. Zulus has raised some good points that we should make sure that we tighten up as much as possible any sunset provision, any restrictions that we want to put in place to address some of the neighborhood concerns. So I'm wondering whether we should vote to support the grant application, but formalize some of the terms at a later date, or should it all be rolled into one? And maybe Tim could give us some practical advice on that.
Right. That's what I was curious about. Tim?
Yeah, so the application deadline is January 29th. So if this board has a January 27th meeting, I could, report back on some of the issues that have been brought up during this comment period and from the select board, to give you a little more, confidence in those details being worked out.
Madam Chair, for Katie's point?
Yes.
Just given the timeline, I agree with Katie. I think it might be prudent tonight to just vote to approve him to apply for the grant. And then he's going to have to come back to us with all the provisions he works out. I think we need to take a second vote. If he doesn't get the grant, it's a moot point, but I think we should at least let him apply for the grant.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Zulus?
I mean, if there's no downside, personally, I'd rather wait till the 27th if there's no downside to that.
I'm just thinking, Michael, every minute counts, so we've just spent an hour on this already tonight. Every minute we hear count, we've already spent an hour on this tonight, just to keep the grant moving, because we're going to have to come back to it again.
I think, Mr. Zulus, that what Mr. Wells is saying, that the last day is the 29th, but the sooner we get in, the more likely it is that we'll actually get funds. Is that correct, Mr. Zawinski? Yes, Ms. Conlon.
Madam Chair, I actually, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
No, I actually don't know if that's actually the case, yeah. Madam Chair. I think that the deadline is the 20th. So there are 4 funding rounds for this grant. One was in December, one was January 5th, one is January 29th, and one is late February. Okay. So I think, there's a batch of applications that come in each of those dates, and those are considered and awarded. So I don't think that there's necessarily an advantage in applying tomorrow, for instance. one way or the other, I'm going to continue to work on this. And if you want me to check in on the 27th and take a formal vote, that's fine. If you want to vote tonight, also fine. If you want to tell me to stop working on it, then please do that.
I don't think that's the idea. I think the idea is just to have some of these things formalized. But Ms. Conlon?
So, Madam Chair, I think we should set the 27th as the outside date, but if for some reason, whether related to one of the 40B projects or something else, we need a meeting next week, we should probably, I'd at least like us to try to get this teed up and ready for action at the earlier meeting rather than the 27th.
Right. I agree. I'd like to get it done sooner rather than later, and just to make sure that we follow up to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. But I do think we probably will need an interim meeting. So perhaps we could put it on that agenda.
And one thing that I'll say, and this sounds kind of funny, there's the application deadline is on the 29th. There's about a 3 to 4 week lag between the deadline and the announcement of the awards. So you obviously want to have as much buttoned up as possible. But I think, in the interest of getting things right, if something happens in February where, we decide actually this is a bad idea, we don't want to do it, we just don't take the money. That sounds funny, but I think it's definitely something that we can be taking advantage of the time periods to really drill down into these details and continue to work on this. So I think, we're definitely aiming for the 29th, but there's also still a fair amount of time to really get this right.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. So, yes.
Oh, I just want to say one more thing while we're talking about East Milton, and I'm sorry it's not on the agenda, but the planning board is going to be having a meeting on the 21st. That's a week from tomorrow, with the final report of our consultant working with the East Milton Working Group. So if folks are interested in that, that'll be on the public meeting calendar.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is put this on the next agenda. Hopefully it's next week, even though I'm sure we all would like a break from meetings. Not that I don't love seeing each and every one of you, but okay. So.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Zawinski, and thank you, Chief King, for coming. Okay, thank you. Just making a note so it goes on the agenda. So discussion approval Kidder Library request for proposals, and we have Town Council Kevin Freitag to guide us through what happened with the last round of the Kidder Library RFP and where we are now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon or good evening. Kevin Freitag, Town Council. As you know, this board did previously approve an RFP for the sale of the so-called Kidder branch of the Milton Library. The period for which the bids could be submitted was actually extended, but despite that extension, no bids were submitted. So now the proposal is back before this board with one slight modification as a result of some communications that we had, that I had, and that the procurement officer for Milton had with some folks who were interested in the building, particularly from Kidder. And that dealt with one of the requirements in the RFP that the bid be submitted with a commitment letter, a finance commitment letter. And they were having some difficulty with that. So what we came up with was a slight revision to the RFP that simply removes in the valuation criteria the section that specifically deals with letters of commitment. It removes the unacceptable provision, which was that a letter of commitment not be submitted with the bid. So under the old RFP, if you didn't submit a letter of commitment, your bid was unacceptable and it could be rejected. Under this slightly revised version, you can submit a bid without a letter of commitment, and it won't be rejected on those grounds. It's important, I think, though, to point out that the advantageous levels for submitting a letter of commitment with your bid proposal are still there. So in other words, people that are a bidder that does submit a letter of commitment and it meets the criteria of highly advantageous, which is, I think it identifies at least 100 to 150% of the bid purchase price, the proposed purchase price, then that's still going to be rated highly advantageous. And then there are two subsequent categories as well, depending on what the level of commitment is in the letter that's submitted. It's just that the bottom rung, the rung that makes it unacceptable to not include a letter of commitment, has been removed. So it just sort of opens up a little bit the opportunity for bidders to submit bids in response to the RFP, but it doesn't really take anything away from the town in terms of still having the ability to evaluate bids based on those letters of commitment, which is the right decision, because it's still important for the town to be able to look at the bids and say, this bid seems to be, more reasonable or better bid for the town because it is accompanied by a letter of commitment and a certain dollar figure. So that's the only thing that has changed in the RFP that's before for your consideration.
Thank you. Do members have questions or comments? No.
Madam Chair, we don't have a draft motion. So maybe if Mr. Freitag could give us the language, I'm happy to move it just to try to move the discussion along. Is it just to approve would it be to approve the amended request for proposals and publish that?
That's correct.
All right, then I'll move that we approve the amended request for proposals for the Kittle Library and issue the RFP.
Second.
Any discussion? I don't know, Mr. Freitag, stop me if this is not the right time to mention this, but I did get an email from one of the trustees with an offer or a question about having an appraisal done. I know that we have evaluation from the assessor. The library trustees had an appraisal done some time ago, and they asked about having it updated or about us getting an appraisal, and I just wondered if that was something that was recommended once the RFPs come in, or
I'm not exactly sure what the question is. I don't think it's going to affect the board's vote tonight or the way that the RFP goes out. I'm happy to follow up with you after the meeting, though, and talk to the folks at Discovery if they have specific questions.
Okay, thank you. I meant a trustee from the library.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what that I was not clear. So, okay, thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Fleischer. Okay, so number 12 is a discussion, capital improvement planning committee report on the fire station building committee recommendation. And Mr. Wells, I understand, is the current chair.
Yeah,
Chair, I think I'll be recused on this item, so I just want the minutes to show I'm going to recuse myself.
Thank you for reminding me.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I don't know if Dan Cock's on. Is Dan Cock on with us, Hillary?
I don't believe he is. I didn't see his name.
Okay. So the fire station, we had our first meeting on, was it last Friday, Michael? The fire station building committee was the only presenter.
Friday
they
morning.
Did come, yeah, they did come in and present their entire package for all three stations. The what they believe would be a dollar amount, which we did vote, which will be coming to you. Did we provide the number to the board already, Michael, or do we want to have them come in and let them present what it's going to be?
No, we haven't presented the dollar amount to the board.
Yeah, so I haven't presented the dollar amount. I think I'd rather have them come in and present the dollar amount. We did vote the dollar amount. The one good thing that I will say, and I'll let them present it, is what was presented to us, and this is something goes back to when before Amy left that they had been working on with Amy, was to try and make this work, all three stations work under the Article 43, which was voted. And I'm pleased to announce that with the exception of two things, and one would be $600,000 that we had parked in capital stabilization 2 years ago for this, would be to use that, which has been sitting there waiting to be directed to this. And the second would be an application from the Fire Station Building Committee. It could be any time up to as late as 2026 to the CPA committee for a CPA funding portion of about $500,000. And with those two, the dollar amount that they're going to come us, we would be able to fund the entire project, the remainder of it under Article 43, which would mean no additional tax dollars to the citizens of the town.
Right.
And that's how we voted it. And that's how it'll be presented to us when they bring it in. The 500 from the CPA, they say, could be used anytime, could be applied for any time as late as 2026. And I think they're inclined. Would you agree with me, Michael? I think they were inclined to do it later versus sooner, and it looked like that was how they wanted to do it.
Correct. And if I could add two more things to the
Go ahead, absolutely.
former point about the $600,000 of cap stabilization that was parked there 2 years ago. I believe that requires a 2/3 vote and a town meeting article for upcoming annual town meeting. So that's something that would have to be put together.
The article's being written by the committee, and that will be in the article, that part of it.
Okay. And the other piece was, so Brianne Sussel, who works for Unibank in coordination with the Treasurer's Office, ran 3 different scenarios of cash flow. The Capital Improvement Committee supported that one model, which to Member Wells's point, they can present to this board, that there was 3 models. One did not have negative cash flow. And that third one that didn't have negative cash flow is the one that the Capital Improvement Committee supported.
And they did present at the warrant committee on Monday.
Yes, they did.
So if people wanted to also watch that, they could. Mr. Zulus?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay.
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is, I hope we get as much feedback on the CPA aspect of this as possible, because I think, Richard, at one point they thought they could do 900,000. And so as much as we can push into CPA, it seems to me we should, because, low to moderate income homeowners and low to moderate income seniors don't have to pay into that, and low income residents don't. So to me, as much as we can get into CPA as possible, and I don't know if that, if we need to have maybe Allison scrub that or someone else, but so I'm sure they will. That's one thing that's important. And then two, is Ms. Preval gonna scrub these numbers and in terms of making sure that we can do this without any additional tax raise?
Yeah, so
go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
No, it's one of her priorities when she gets in the door. Good. Obviously, we're in the middle of 21 and trying to get some guidance on 22, so I can come to this board on the 27th and to the warrant committee next Tuesday and present what I will call a preliminary unbalanced budget, knowing what's on the right hand side of the sheet. But yeah, that, to your point, Member Zulus, that's certainly a priority for Karen.
But Richard, that's great news. That's what you just said is great news, because for all of us who were thought the CPA was a good idea, the idea that's going to make a difference is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know what else you have on your radar. I mean, this has been your baby. I don't know what you have on your radar for CPA, and I do know
To me, it's fire stations, fire stations,
Yeah,
fire
I get
stations.
it. I get it. I think the good news, I think they were aware of that. I think the good news is that Article 43, without charging anyone another dollar just on the retiring debt,
Yep.
and just the use of that cap stabilization,
Yep.
funds all three.
Yep.
Right.
Funds all three stations.
So
Go ahead,
to
Melinda.
your point, Mike, they did actually have their owner's project manager go through Atherton and headquarters and actually put line items for what could be used.
Yeah.
So you'll get that detail. It was actually really exciting to look at that and see it. So thank you. But Mr. Doyle, did you have a comment or a question?
You said it in another way. I was just going to suggest, vis-a-vis Mike's comments, that some modeling, very basic modeling out maybe 3 or 4 years, 5 years would be perfect for this so that people can see what it looks like.
Right. Well, that warrant committee meeting, they did a good job, and they of course can come in and give that presentation to us too. So maybe we can put that on for the 27th. Yes.
Just to follow up to Mike Zulis's comments. So with regard to the new chief financial officer, so we have the interim there with us, because I'm happy to be, I'm not happy, but I'm glad that I'm happy to be chair of. I understand all the operational aspects and their needs, but I'm not a spreadsheet person, as Michael knows. But I get their requests. I can read them. I understand them. I'm not one to create them, and I'm sure they'll be great with that. So I'm pretty confident. This has been going at, because as you know, at least since the time I've been our liaison there, my goal has been, if you really want to do this, help this community, let's do it with as much as we can within the guidelines of the article that it was written for. And absent these two things, I mean, it was a unanimous vote. I mean, it was, you were there, Michael. It was an absolutely unanimous vote. They were very pleased with the report and the modeling that was done. So let's just hope it works. So the article's being written. I'm sure they're going to be coming into us very shortly with it.
Right. Well, I think it's amazing that they've come in a place that we can actually use the debt stabilization fund, and just those two additions.
I think, just one final, I think part of the thought, Michael, was to let the CPA build up, and that the fact that you had this fluctuating 4-year window that you could use it in, that 500, I think they were thinking of the CPA and other requests as well. So
yeah, I mean, right now the estimates would be about $880,000 a year, of which
annually,
of which you could use 70%, 70 to 80% in one of the areas. So you're talking about $720K could be used annually for a period of time. Now, look, you're not going to use CPA forever for the fire stations,
right?
But to get over the hump for those early years of Article 43, when it's lower, that was the idea, right? When the early years of Article 43 with the debt coming off the schools coming off the books,
right,
you have less for fire stations. So if you could make up the difference with CPA, then in the later years you don't need CPA because Article 43 money is going to be higher.
It is. Yeah. So okay, that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. And Ms. Conlon, thank you. Okay, so now we have 40B peer review contracts and authorization for town administrator to hopefully sign. Although if we have all of them, maybe that's not quite as necessary. I don't know if everyone had a chance to look through them. We got them right before the meeting, but I think actually all of them might be there. But Mr. Freitag, I don't know who can confirm that, whether it's you, Mr. Dennehy, or Mr. Freitag, whether these are all the contracts that the ZBA is going to need.
Yes, I can take that, Madam Chair. Kevin Freitag, Town Council. I believe that these are all of the contracts. There are 4 projects, and there are 3 different consultants for each project for a total of 12 contracts. It's important to note that each of the contracts is slightly different prices for the services that are being provided. What you have before you are my edits to the contracts, they're significant. They include a number of the standard type provisions that that we put into all of our contracts for services that are being provided to the town. So while the substance of the contract really has not been affected, a lot of the provisions are there to be consistent with contracts that we have with other vendors. I would point out that my review process of those is still not complete. It is nearly complete, but I would suggest that if the board were to approve these tonight and authorize the town administrator to sign them, that it do so subject to final review and approval by my office. There are also a couple other matters that I just want to run down with the town administrator tomorrow to make sure that that these contracts are ready to sign. So that'd be my suggestion, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. I believe Tim Zawinski, if he's still on the line, he can provide some additional information regarding the services that are being provided by each one of these consultants for the projects.
Thank you. Mr. Zerwinski?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Town Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So there are, as Town Council said, there are 4 projects. Each of those has a peer reviewer assigned to review the site planning and engineering and drainage, the design, and then the traffic analysis for each of the 4 40B projects that have applications in front of the Board of Appeals right now. So that's how you get to 12 contracts. Those peer reviewers and those sort of topic areas were recommended by a consultant that's working with the Board of Appeals, Judy Barrett, who's working through a grant from Mass Housing Partnership. So these are, pretty standard things that we want, people to be looking at on behalf of the ZBA to give them the best information they can possibly get to understand these applications. So that's that. And I think, the sooner that we can get money in the accounts, which I think we're owed from a couple of the projects, and then these contracts signed, the sooner we can get these peer reviews off and running and start to evaluate these applications in a really systematic way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Dennehy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Town Planner Zawinski. Just to follow up, just for the viewing audience, that the funding for these peer reviews comes from the developers. This is not money that the town pays. This is part of their requirement under 40B legislation. And we have been asked by Judy Barrett, who's the consultant, that we and I have to thank Town Council for taking the time so quickly to work through these. As you can imagine, in a COVID world, with most towns being remote and under the same circumstances as the town of Milton, these 40Bs are piling up, and these subject matter experts, who she has worked with in the past and has the utmost faith in as very, very qualified subject matter experts. It's a very limited pool, and with all the 40B activity going on in the state, much of it being backed up, it is a bit time sensitive that we secure their services so that the Zoning Board of Appeals has the best subject matter experts to do this peer review on behalf of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Thank you. Ms. Conlon?
Madam Chair, for discussion, I will move that we approve contracts with Vaness Associates, Tetra Tech, and Davis Square, subject to further review and revision by Town Council, and that we authorize the town administrator to sign the contracts.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells? Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Mr. Wells, you're muted. Okay, we'll just, I guess, note him as an abstention. I do want to note that I think that maybe one of the reasons we could have a meeting before the 27th is to talk about some additional help for staff, even though there are peer reviews being done. there's still a lot of work to be done by staff and Katie and Mike Zulus and not Mike Zulus, Mike Dennehy and Mr. Zerwinski and I have been chatting about that, and I think the board needs to hear some of that. So, Mr. Wells, I want to give you one more chance to vote. Okay, hopefully everything's all right. Is there anything else before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay, thank you. Number 14 is discussion 485, 487 Blue Hills Parkway. That's the Ice House project. Staff already has given Mr. Zerwinski their questions, comments, testimony, just sort of the opening to pass on to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The question is, does our board wish to also make a statement? And I will say I already started putting some comments together in case we do, because I thought it was important to document the process that we went through with the PEL process, and also the discussions in site walks, and also, just in the small group, and the resulting changes because of that. I do have some of those changes down on paper, but there may be other things that we wish to talk about. So, Mr. Zulus, you look like you want to say something.
Well, I was thinking.
Sorry.
I'll say very quickly. I just as an overview, I think the Ice House experience was a very positive experience. I think the developer was cooperative, willing to listen to the concerns of the neighborhood and address the concerns of the neighborhood. I think the neighborhood was pleased with the result and the changes that were made. And so I think, and that's in contrast to a lot of the other 40B developers in terms of their cooperation and their willingness to hear the neighborhood and their willingness to make changes based on the neighborhood's concerns. So I think my view is that it's a very positive story, and it's a very positive story in contrast to the story of some of the other developers here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think absolutely.
Right. Okay. Well, and that was my feeling, and I thought it was important to document that. So, if you'd like me to continue, and maybe we can get some assistance, I have talked to Johanna Schneider, and she would be happy to help us as well. Draft something appropriate. So I can start, and I don't know, Mr. Zulus, since you really were leading that at the time because you were chair, I don't know if you would like to help with the drafting, or if you just want to, as we go along, you can add your, okay.
Happy to be useful in any way that you want. So
Okay.
I'm at your disposal.
Okay. Yes.
It was my understanding. I lost contact, so I'll just get back in. It was my understanding that this was not going to be a very long process for the Ice House. That it would be relatively short.
Yeah, that's I've heard that too. But I think
we better do it soon, because it may be over before we even draft it.
We have to do it soon, and so yes, so we do have to do it soon. I had tried over the weekend to actually get something completely drafted, but alas, it's been very busy, and
but to Richard's point, I think because of the peer reviews, the next hearing is not until the end of February, so we have a little time, Richard.
Right, we have a little time, but if they have more time to have that information, that could be helpful. This does bring me to a point that Tim is going to be working to make sure that, or working with Beverly to make sure that all the evidence for lack of a better term, all the material that's presented during the hearings is really easily accessible and well organized on the website. So anything that we submit under town, which would be, where part of that would be there, and then there would be something for applicant, and then something for, you know, say peer review and the ZBA. So I'm really, I want to say just thank you so much for all the work that Mr. Zawinski has done, and all that he's continuing to do, because it's a Herculean task, and we really appreciate it. But something like this letter would be going in there, so people could see it as soon as we submit it. Great. Okay. So next is discussion approval. We'll really update. No approval yet. I don't think, for the transfer of a license for RCN Telecom Services of Massachusetts LLC from Radiate Holdings LP to Stone Peak Infrastructure Partners. So it's really a transfer of holding company. It's not even the whole parent. Mr. Dennehy?
Sure, and thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll turn this over to Member Zulus quickly, but I've had a couple of conversations with Attorney Bill Solomon, who helped us through last year's very successful contract negotiations with Comcast. Mr. Solomon was not a part of the RCN negotiations 5 years ago, but he is a great resource for things like this. So the initial call took place to find out what we need to do as a town, what the date stamp means, and how many days we have to hold the public hearing. It did turn into a conversation with Mr. Sullivan, advising us that it might be an opportunity for the town to take a look at that contract and make sure that every stone is overturned. So, Member Zulus, if you just want to, just talk about the conversation that we had with Attorney Solomon and what he's presented.
Yeah, I mean, Mike captured it well. I mean, as you pointed out, Melinda, that the parent of RCN is being bought out by a private equity firm, and as part of that, we have to consent to the transfer of the license. And Mr. Solomon, who has consulted on contracts with RCN recently in neighboring communities, suggested that it'll be a good idea in the context of our consenting to the transfer to take a look at the license to see if there's anything that we could possibly improve in the context of what's been improved with other licenses. And so he said that he could provide this service for us for pretty short money. Mike, I can't remember what the amount was, but it was pretty short money, as I remember.
Not to exceed $500.
Right. I guess the approval here would be to engage Mr. Solomon for the purposes of reviewing the RCN license transfer. That would really be it.
Okay.
So I mean, I guess I'll if everyone is comfortable, I'll move to engage Mr. Solomon for a fee not to exceed $500 to review the RCN contract for the purposes of providing consent to the transfer of the license, and authorize Mr. Dennehy to sign an engagement on behalf of the board.
I'll second.
Okay.
Any discussion?
Mike, are you good with that?
I am, yeah. And then just as a footnote, Jen McCullough in our office has started lining up the date for the first portion of that public hearing, which would take place on February 10th. So that's to come. So the public hearing portion is already beginning to be scheduled. Mr. Solomon convinced myself and I think Mr. Zulus that his work will be pretty short-lived. It is basically a pro forma transfer, but just he wanted to take a quick look at it and not too much time on it, but just see if there's anything glaring that we may be able to take advantage of.
Okay. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Great, thank you very much. Thank you for working on that. Discussion select board response to the Logan Airport 2018-2019 EDR. I understand that typically Caris North composes our response, and I think maybe with some assistance from Ms. Conlon and Mr. Zulus, since you're our sort of our board point people on this. Did anybody want to discuss anything about the report right now, or we do have a little while, although I didn't write down the date by which we need to respond. So,
Madam Chair, not substantively discuss it, but just to let people know that that Massport published their 2018-2019 environmental data report for Logan Airport, and the comment period will run from January 6th through February 22nd. So they're going to have a visual presentation. We don't have a date for that yet, but the report's available on the Massport website, and the town has usually filed a comment letter on past EDRs. So our expectation would be that we'll file a comment letter again on this particular draft. And as you said, town council often does the first draft, and sometimes we've had the airplane committee comment on it. They haven't been meeting recently, but we can send it to the members just so they have a copy of it. And I'm sure the board will want to make some comments on it, and probably the CAC representative. So those are the dates. We have until February 22nd to submit our comments.
thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Zulus?
One other thing in the area of airplanes, and this will be on a future agenda item, but just to highlight it very quickly, it's something that just arose really early this morning, late last night, early this morning, and that is that the FAA released in the Federal Register its long-awaited neighborhood environmental survey regarding overflight noise annoyance. We think this could be very helpful to the effort to change FAA noise policy, and we have until March 15th. There's public comment on that through March 15th. So more on that later, but just to give the residents a heads up that has finally happened, and we'll have more on that later.
Great, thank you very much. Item 17, discussion approval select board response to Department of Public Utilities docket number 20-120, proposed rate increase for customers of Boston Gas doing business as National Grid. Mr. Freitag, is there anything to update on this, or no?
Madam Chair, I don't have any updates. No.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, do we need to take a vote?
Do we need to take a vote?
Yes, approve. Do we need to approve this, Kevin?
I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I think approval just got put there. I think there's, yeah.
No, I think the discussion at the last meeting was that there may have been a thought that the select board wanted to put together a response or a filing. And if we have till the end of the month essentially to do that.
So, and the update,
well, I just want to clear it off if I can.
the update on that, Madam Chair, is that Arthur and I are going to work together on that. I don't believe we've had any resident feedback as yet, and Arthur has done his work, and I haven't done mine yet. So,
okay, I apologize. I had forgotten about that. So, all right. It will go to the next agenda, which will probably be before the 27th. Okay, great. Thank you. So closure of warrant for the May 3rd, 2021 annual town meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to, this is, looks like a 19, right? Are we at 18 or 19?
Just say so moved.
Okay, so moved.
Do I have a second?
I'm reading off my phone.
Second.
Thank you.
So I like the midget.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
I'll vote yes, assuming we're still going to be talking about the articles because I think we should include the articles before we close it, but.
Oh, you're right, that they were reversed. And I didn't catch that. Well, let's table that then for the moment, okay?
Should have got a note too.
Well, if we could have the discussion of the articles before we vote on closing it, I think that's all we would need to do.
Okay. Okay. So in looking at the articles, so I know that it's possible that these would all be going. I think we need to wait on them, but it's accessory dwelling unit bylaw, condominium conversion bylaw, the deposit of fill bylaw, AKA the tree bylaw. And we have a new floodplain bylaw. I don't know. I don't really have information on that. I don't know whose it is. There's no name on it. Does anyone know from whom it came?
So
It's the
that
planning board.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it is planning board? Okay. I thought it would be, but then I just didn't know if it might be Conservation Commission or, and then we also have an article that I believe people received some information on from Katie to make some modifications to the TA. I don't know where mine is. The TA legislation, because a comma got moved, and then there are a few other changes. Ms. Conlon, do you want to walk people through that, or do people just want to accept that now and we can review it later?
Madam Chair, I think we're going to need a couple more technical changes to it, minor changes, but this essentially would just amend the legislation that we brought to town meeting in 2015, was signed by the governor in 2016. Unfortunately, and we didn't discover this for quite some time afterwards, but when the Senate and the House passed this in 2016, they made some stylistic changes. They added some subsection head numbers, and they added in the town administrator shall in all the subsections rather than the way we had initially done it, which was to have it at the beginning and then have the listing of the subsections. So in making some of those changes, they took out a parenthetical and they ended up changing the entire meaning of the hiring authority. The way subsection 2D currently is worded, it gives the town administrator authority to hire department heads, but not the employees who work for the department heads. And that's because of the repositioning of a comma by the legislature in the draft that we sent. So what we submitted, we the town meeting submitted to the legislature in 2015 was correct. It carved out only the consolidated facilities director because that's jointly appointed with the school committee. And one member of the school committee in particular was very strongly in favor of keeping that appointment with the board rather than the TA or the superintendent. So we carved out the consolidated facilities director, but the legislature changed the meaning in section 2D. So we really should correct that to clarify that the town administrator can hire the not only department heads, but employees in the departments that are under the select board. So it's a technical change. It's just a correction to make it consistent with what the original intent was and what the meaning should be. And then, so if we're going to do that, the other changes involve just changing Board of Selectmen to Select Board and fixing some grammatical errors. The only other correction was in section 2L, because it refers to rental of town facilities. And what was really intended at that time was like renting out the Council on Aging for a specific event, or renting out a town property. There's a lot of them that are carved out. Obviously, it's not cemetery, library, school property, but something like renting the the East Milton Library to the Art Center is something that would want to have public process in, and that really would be more appropriate for the board. So I put in this draft the town council reviewed to say short-term rental, and maybe define it as not exceeding, say, 7 days, but others on the board may have a different way of defining short-term that makes more sense. So it's meant, this article would really seek to fix a mistake in what the legislature sent back to us and make fix some other minor changes. Town council had a change too in the introductory language of the article, and to take out clarifying and superseding and just say amending chapter 65 of the Acts of 2016. So there may be some other tweaks that we need to make to this, but I think it's in pretty good shape for the board to consider.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Comments? No? Okay. And then we also have a citizen's petition, although a second one came in, but there's no article with it. It's just signatures. So we do have one citizen's petition that came in with an article regarding basically elders who have lived in the town, I believe, for a period of time would be exempt from overrides. I didn't have a chance to read the whole article, but so no new fees, overrides, or reassessments could be imposed on them. 35 years, sorry. Residents that have paid real estate taxes in the town for a minimum of 35 years and have not had a child in the Milton school system for 25 years would be exempt from overrides, whether voted on or allowed by law, i.e. Proposition 2.5. So, so I think that this could be accepted. There are quite a few signatures, so they probably have all the signatures, but I don't believe it's been certified yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to do it. It's probably not within the bounds of our Proposition 2.5. We probably don't have the authority to do it, unfortunately. So.
I don't know if we have the authority to do this.
Right. I have no idea. So, Kevin, yes, Mr. Freitag.
Just very quickly on that point, that was forwarded to me earlier today, and I forwarded it to DOR to get their take on it, and they raised some similar questions as well, and that it would likely need to be put to the legislature by way of a special act, and that it seemed like there were some other issues, which I'm happy to sort of follow up with on the board on that. That's really not the question, though, in terms of whether or not it goes onto the warrant. It still goes onto the warrant, and then whether or not there are amendments at town meeting or it's approved by the Attorney General's office, even if it were approved by town meeting, are very different questions altogether.
Right. Okay. Yes. So regardless, we now have this article, and as long as the signatures are all certified. Katie?
There's one other article. The bylaw review committee submitted an article asking that their term be extended.
Right.
So I think we should include that one as well.
Yes, we need to include that.
All right, Katie, that came in today?
No, it came in a couple of days ago.
Okay.
I just had it on my old notes. So great. Okay. So I guess I'm not sure what to do about the article that we were sent signatures, but no article. And I guess as Mr. Freitag said, we do have the ability to place articles in after the warrant is closed. So I think that came in at 6:15.
Madam Chair, can I ask Hillary a question? Because I know she knows. I'm familiar with the issue. I wasn't familiar with the potential article. Hillary, did you know before today that they were going to ask that they were going to submit this?
Thank you, Mr. Wells. No, I received a call from the resident at around 3 p.m. She asked what she needed to submit. I said I need an article and signatures by 5. I did receive the signatures, but not the text of an article.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I move to accept the following articles that we've just discussed for inclusion in the May 3rd, 2021 annual town meeting warrant pending final approval of the planning board. And final approval, I guess, by town council of our changes to our article as well. And certification of signatures for the override exemption article. And I think that's it. Do I have a second?
We had a motion pending on the table.
Oh, right.
Just procedurally.
To close. So how do we handle that?
Well, should we have Richard maybe withdraw his motion and then?
I don't think did I actually even read it? I don't think I even, did I? I did read it.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
All right, so I'll withdraw my motion and I'll make a new motion. Do you want me to name all the articles or do?
Do you want to second Melinda's motion?
Yeah, just second my motion.
If I was looking at you, Melinda. So if you made a motion, I'll second it.
Excellent.
I didn't know you made it. I didn't know you made it as a motion.
I did. I know I don't usually do that, but I'm trying to move us
okay.
along because it's 10:30 and I didn't even ask people how they were feeling and what you wanted to do, but let's finish this up. Okay, all those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells? We didn't hear you. No, you're just far away or something. No, you weren't muted. You've just been going in and out.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Zulus.
Buds.
Yes, but I will just to clarify for any of the residents watching, we are voting to put these on the warrant. We are not necessarily voting support for these.
Right.
So all of those condo conversion people, keep those cards and letters coming.
Right. This is just and it's pending the planning board's acceptance or approval. So
Well, and to that point, since we have some minor changes still to come on the town administrator article, I think we could clean that up and get it to the warrant committee after we've made the additional technical changes.
right. I think I did add our final change approval as well to my motion. Okay. And myself, yes. Okay. Now, I move to close the warrant for the May 3rd, 2021 annual town meeting.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yeah.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Collins, yes. Okay, great. So it's 10:37 and we have some things left. How are people feeling? I said I would ask at 10 and I didn't.
What do we have there?
So I think we're really towards the end here. Okay.
You're at number 20, correct?
Yes, the assessors. Yep. I'll entertain a motion. Yep. Okay. Excellent. Okay, I'll move to accept the payment in lieu of taxes from the Milton Housing Authority in the amount of $9,058.45. And I just want to give a shout out to our housing authority. You know, they do great work, and we're really lucky to have them in Milton, and the people who they serve. They're our residents, and we love them. So great. Okay, all those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. So,
I'm 21. I make a motion to accept the grant from First Congregational Church of Milton in the amount of $1,000 and a grant from Anthony J. Chichello and Christine Mary Camp in the amount of $200.
Second.
All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes, and thank you for their generosity.
Okay. Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes, and I echo that very much. We're so thankful for the church's generosity and the Chichellos as well. Okay, so we have meeting minutes from September, wait a minute. Sorry, this is out of order because I have an old set. I couldn't get the new ones printed. We have a Forbes House grant that we've been asked to endorse. I don't know if everybody had a chance to look at the letter. So a previous board had endorsed a similar grant, and Katie kindly gave me that, and Heidi also sent some information and a letter to some of us. So I combined those basically, and then updated them with some more recent information about the museum. And
Mass Cultural Council, correct?
right, it's a grant to both do some maintenance, but also some code upgrades for the carriage house and for the barn. And they've really done a lot of increased programming, but also more recently with COVID, events for weddings and things, because they can do them outside. And it's become a good source of funds, financing for or revenue for them. And they'd like to be able to do that, and also continue to increase the programming that they've been offering, and this would really allow them to do that. So this is a Mass Cultural Council grant. It's a capital grant.
I'll make a motion that we support the Forbes House application to the Mass Cultural Council for the grant. I have the number in front of me for that grant.
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins, yes. Well, I hope they get it. They're just a huge asset to this town. I want to see them succeed. So future meeting dates. I know I keep alluding to this meeting that we don't have scheduled yet. Our next one that's scheduled is the 27th. I know we're trying to schedule a site walk for 652 Canton Avenue, the PEL, and I'm not sure where we are in that. The developer was trying to get us all on one date, but Mr. Dennehy.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I had a conversation with Tim Zerwinski this afternoon. He received an email from the Tamposi family regarding a site walk. Due to COVID-related stuff, they prefer to do it at one time, understanding the restrictions of the number of people who can gather outside. So we're on a bit of a merry-go-round this week, trying to iron out a time that worked for everyone, where we could kind of segment it so that we don't have a quorum of the select board. So town planner's suggestion was to come up with a date and time next week that could work for 2 installments, and let's present that to the Tamposi family.
And I neglected to send you and Tim an email. Katie reminded me that the MMA annual meeting, which is Thursday and Friday, usually winds down by the afternoon on Friday. So maybe maybe if everybody's available Friday afternoon, maybe we could work something out.
I could probably do that. I could probably do next Friday. I can't do anything this week at all, but next Friday, I can do any day next week except Thursday afternoon after 2.
Okay. How is that for everyone else, Friday afternoon?
Okay, maybe we can have a meeting too and get clear whatever's on the agenda. Just kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Maybe start around 2:30 or 3 and then stagger it for 20-minute, half hour. I'm not sure how long it's going to take.
This is for the site walk on this Friday? This Friday?
Next Friday.
Oh, next Friday. Next Friday.
Yeah.
Which will be the
20. Right? Is that right? Yeah.
22nd.
22nd. 22nd. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I will present that to the town planner to present to them and get back with everyone. If I'm hearing the vice chair correctly, Friday, the 22nd, 2:30 PM and 3:30 PM so that we can stagger.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Dennehy. So if we, oh dear, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at next week. If we were to have a meeting next week, what date, is there a date open to us? I think we'd have to do something in probably more towards during the day, unless, because the ZBA isn't doing all the hearings. They said they were, maybe there is space in the evening. I don't know. Mr. Dennehy, do you know if there are any evenings available for us?
I don't, but I'll certainly check with Beverly Sutton in the morning.
Okay.
I know the planning board is meeting the 21st. Tim mentioned the East Milton Neighborhood Association Working Group.
Right.
That's at 7 on the 21st.
Right, which I think we'll probably all want to go to.
Master plan is on the 19th.
I'm sorry?
Master plan.
Master plan is on the 19th. That's right.
The Warren Committee are on the 19th as well.
Right.
Should we try for Wednesday, the 20th, if the Board of Appeals doesn't need the Zoom technology?
Right. I think we'll need to do that.
The Board of Appeals is posted for Wednesday, the 20th.
Okay. Well, is there a possibility of doing an earlier, like a daytime?
Next week?
I'm sorry?
Next week?
Did you say 2 o'clock? It's hard to hear you. Sorry.
You can't hear me? I didn't say
Now
a
I
time.
can. When you sit forward, it's better, but I'm sure that's not very comfortable.
Technology, first time I've ever used them. I'll do whatever you want next week. The only afternoon would be anything after like 1 on Thursday.
What is good for other people's schedules, or maybe we should do this offline?
Tuesday or Wednesday. I mean, Thursday and Friday are the all-day MMA meetings, if we can try to avoid those.
Right. I think we need to avoid those. Maybe sometime during the day on Wednesday. Okay. Okay, we can firm up a time, I guess, unless people have something there.
How many items are you thinking, Madam Chair? How long a time?
How long? Hopefully
Yeah.
not terribly long. I just, I think we just want to have a little room to maybe talk about some things relative to 40B hearings and the PEL, and although if Tim may not have it ready by the 27th, but yeah, Mr. Dennehy?
If we do decide to meet Tuesday, I'm trying to think, Monday's the holiday, so we have to take that into effect with respect to the 48-hour rule.
Right. Okay. So then we'd have to post on Friday.
Friday for Wednesday.
Friday for Wednesday. Okay. So that's good to know. But also we thought we might take up Franklin as well. So let's talk about possible agenda tomorrow and things and then we can know whether we definitely need a meeting or not, and then we'll get it posted for Friday. How's that, Mr. Dennehy and Ms. Conlon? Okay, great, thank you.
Could we defer the minutes until the next meeting just to try to move this along tonight?
Yes, defer. And
Madam Chair, point of order, did I miss it, or did you not vote to close the warrant?
We did.
You voted.
You did.
Okay, thank you.
I just made the motion, which I think throws everyone off because I don't usually do that.
Okay.
So, okay. So members' reports, Ms. Conlon, I believe there's a Finance Committee report, or?
I think we've covered it all under the CARES Act.
Great, okay. Is there any public comment response? Yeah, okay. Future agenda items, I think that we've collected those along the way, and if people have them, they can also email Mr. Dennehy or myself. Any community happenings?
Madam Chair, just a point of order. Did we miss the town administrator's report? I don't know if there was anything to be
Oh,
reported.
I'm so sorry. I kind of scribbled on top of it. Mr. Dennehy, forgive me.
No worries. Thank you. I know it's a late hour, but I want to take a quick opportunity to thank the town's IT director, Jim Segroy. Had a meeting with Jim, a brief meeting Monday with Jim, where he announced after 42 years of service with the town of Milton, Jim is going to, he submitted his letter of intent to retire in January 31st. So I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge this before this board. There's so much on the agenda these days, but just thank Jim. I mean, 42 years, if you take a moment to think about that, there's not too many people that have done anything for 42 years, never mind dedicate themselves to serve the town of Milton. So I want to thank Jim personally and professionally for his service and wish him good luck with his future endeavors. Thank you, Jim.
Yes, thank you. And there's his name. It's strange to think that we won't always see it there.
For select board.
I'm sorry?
He might run for select board. You never know.
Oh, well, there you go.
He was hired. He spent 35 of his years in the police department, or 34. He was hired as a crime analyst right out of Northeastern University by the police department back in the 70s. That's when he first came in.
Wow. Sounds very exciting. But, well, yes, we're all very thankful, I'm sure, and wish him well, and his lovely family too. They'll get more time with him. So I now move to enter executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Subsection A, Subsection 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, as I believe that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the select board, specifically the parcel abutting 432 Adams Street. And also for the purpose of considering purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, as I believe that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the select board, specifically with regard to 525 Adams Street, and not to return to open session, but to adjourn from executive session.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle?
Yes.
Mr. Wells? Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Ms. Collins? Yes. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us.